markets and the reliance on China, and also just kind of talking about, earnings, how much they really impact the market in the short term. So there's some data out there, as John highlights, that says not so much. Looking at futures here, S&P continues to hold strong, up 10. The Dow futures up 103 points. This is Bloomberg.
Loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition.
For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked bread to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps my street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small, only by American Express.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check all at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Friday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. I'm Paul Sweeney. Tom Keene is off today. Looking at futures, we have green on the screen. Risk on day today. We had some rhetoric coming out of certain officials, senior White House officials, about some trade, maybe continuing to move that process along. And rhetoric is all this market needs. We have, again, green on the screen, S&P up 10 points. Let's get a sense of what's going on underneath the indices. We welcome Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at right now?
Well, Applied Materials jumps out early on, Paul, because the shares are up almost 7% in early trading. The chip equipment maker's earnings for the fiscal fourth quarter beat analysts' highest estimate in a Bloomberg survey. Revenue fell less than projected, and Applied Materials' sales forecast for this quarter also beat estimates. So pluses all around, which is more than what you can say for NVIDIA. Those shares, little change. On the one hand, the chip maker's third quarter profit and revenue were higher than projections. On the other hand, its fourth quarter sales forecast came up short. So you're seeing not a whole lot of movement in that stock early on. Qualcomm, though, up 2.5%. The maker of mobile phone chips was raised to buy from neutral at Mizuho Securities, which cited the potential benefits of a shift to 5G wireless networks. Now, beyond technology, Occidental Petroleum shares up almost 3%. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway disclosed it bought shares of the oil producer during the third quarter. Now, Berkshire previously invested $10 billion in Occidental in return for preferred shares and warrants. So they're actually increasing their stake.
Wow.
Yes, absolutely. And then you also have RH, the owner of the home furnishings retailer Restoration Hardware, up 7%. Berkshire built a stake in that company last quarter as well. And speaking of that sort of business, Masco up 2%. The building product maker agreed to sell its cabinetry unit to private equity firm American Industrial Partners for $1 billion in cash and preferred stock. Now, CenterPoint Energy down 3.5%. Texas regulators proposed a lower return on equity than the utility requested or an administrative law judge recommended in a rate case. They also called for less dependence on equity financing at Centerpoint. Invista Holdings down 5%. Danaher began an exchange offer as part of its split-off of Envista, which is its dental products business. The offer allows Danaher's holders to receive shares of Envista at a 7% discount. So now that's being built into the stock price. Floor & Decor Holdings down 2%. A person familiar with the matter said a 7% stake in the flooring retailer was sold late yesterday through Morgan Stanley. The sale brought in $314 million. Grubhub up 4.5%. The food delivery service raised the equivalent of buy from sell at Barclays. The firm called on Grubhub's board to explore a merger, scale back investments, and do more to fend off rivals.
That's an aggressive call right there.
Yeah, absolutely, considering what's been going on with the company. And the most active stock in early trading, JCPenney, up about 12%, just trading at $1.23. Nonetheless, it is up. The department store chain had a narrower loss for the fiscal third quarter than analysts expected, and CEO Jill Soltau said Penny is, quote, beginning to see results from a turnaround plan.
JCPenney, what a story. Dave Wilson, I want to get your thoughts. You've been covering this equity market thing for a long time. Is it surprising to you how strong this equity market is just on the rhetoric of possible trade phase one or whatever we're going to call it?
Well, if it was just that, I would say yes, but you've got more going on. I mean, bond yield's still not all that high, so, stocks, you're seeing the phrase TINA pop up again. There is no alternative. Bank of America Merrill Lynch with a report out the other day, headline, major FOMO, that is fear of missing out. And given that, we have the S&P 500 up as much as we do this year, 23.5%, those kinds of gains tend to draw people in toward the end of a year. So it's a market in motion that's remaining in motion as much as anything.
It's interesting. We led off the show this morning on surveillance with a fund manager from Gabelli who admittedly is kind of on the wrong side of this. He kind of more defensive, and he's missed out on this last 4 or 5 week rally, which is the market's kind of shifted. It's rotated a little bit out of the defensive names, maybe into some more cyclical names. And if you weren't in that rotation, you've underperformed the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a market that's really been turned on its head. The last few months, if you were to go back, would be all about what you would call the bond proxies, utility stocks, real estate stocks, the kind of companies that you buy for their dividends more than anything else. And lately, you've seen this shift toward the shares of companies that benefit more from the economy because, the concern that's been out there about a possible recession has faded a bit. And as a result, we've seen a change in the kind of shares leading the market here.
Well, talk about this. Bring up one of our favorite names, Dave. Uber. Barclays upgrading the stock, saying it could potentially double here. So talk about another aggressive call coming out here. This stock is obviously, as we all know, has underperformed dramatically since its IPO. It looks like Barclays here, and Ross Sandler is an excellent analyst trying to pick it off the bottom, maybe.
Yeah, and just yesterday, they got this call from the state of New Jersey for $650 million actually in employment taxes because of the question of whether its drivers are independent contractors or not. Uber says yes, New Jersey says no, so that issue isn't going away. And to see Barclays make the call in the wake of that sort of issue, which is, a major concern for, this company because it really speaks to their costs and their ability to turn a profit down the line. That's saying something.
Yeah, and as a resident of the state of New Jersey, one thing New Jersey knows how to do is tax.
Yes, me too, so I know what you're talking about.
But it's interesting. It's not just for Uber. It kind of goes to this whole gig economy. Are these people, whether they're drivers or delivery people or whatever, are they employees of these companies or are they contractors? And makes a big, big difference and really goes to the heart of that gig economy business model because, as we know, the Ubers of the world, they like to offload a lot of those liabilities of having actual employees versus just contractors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't help thinking, you take a step back, right? We've seen in the political field, Walmart, McDonald's, because they pay relatively low salaries, in essence, some of the employees going for government assistance and how that's been an issue. think about it in the context of these gig economy type workers, because who's paying for their health benefits?
Yep.
Where are they going to get assistance if they need it? I mean, so you'd have to think that issue would come up and become ultimately another concern on top of the question of are they employees or not?
Exactly. So we had some good numbers out of Walmart. Give us a sense, Dave? I know you follow this calendar very closely. Do we have more retailers to report earnings over the next week or so?
It's going to be a big week next week. You've got Home Depot and Lowe's. You've got the department store chains, Kohl's, Macy's, Nordstrom, the off-price retailers, TJX and Ross stores, and then a couple of, shall we say, retailing basket cases. The Gap,
right,
whose CEO is leaving, and they've already come out and said their earnings are going to come up short. And L Brands, which is trying to figure out what to do with Victoria's Secret, the lingerie chain. Let's just say it's struggling to find its place with consumers because tastes have changed.
Exactly. I mean, those numbers coming out of Walmart were very strong. The stock's up almost 30% this year. We had some retail sales come out today, still strong, I guess, in line with expectations. But there are certainly areas that I think some analysts are saying, maybe slowing down a little bit in certain areas.
Yeah, bits and pieces of retailing are a challenge. I mean, but you mentioned Walmart. We talked about Penny's a little while back and how their numbers are good. You also had Dillard's out yesterday, smaller retail chain, but you're talking department stores there as well. And those numbers were also positive. Dillard's shares yesterday up more than 14%. So it'll be interesting to see next week if the trend that's starting to emerge among retailers for third quarter earnings, if that goes on, or you start to see more weakness, especially when you think about the department stores trying to compete with the likes of Amazon.com.
All right, so we'll pay attention to your reporting next week on these retailers, and it's so important, and you think about the retailers and their earnings because it goes right to the heart and the health of the consumer. And as we see U.S. manufacturing continue to contract, we see business investment sluggish. It puts more and more pressure on the U.S. retailer. And to date, the U.S. retailers hung in there. Again, whether you look at employment, wage growth, retail sales, pretty strong on the consumer, and that's kind of what has been holding this economy up. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thanks so much for that report. Looking at futures here, continue to hold gains here. S&P futures up 10, the Dow futures up 104 points, NASDAQ up 0.5% or 42 points, 8,300, and again on the S&P we are over 3,100 on the S&P. So equity markets very strong. Finishing up that third quarter earnings period, which was mixed at best. But we have the Fed on the sidelines, and then you put into that some perception that we are moving forward on trade. That's all the ingredients you need here for this rally that we've seen, more of a risk-on feel to this market over the last 4 or 5 weeks, out of defensives into more cyclicals. Let's get national headlines right now with Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you very much, Paul. The former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine has arrived on Capitol Hill to testify in the Trump impeachment inquiry. Marie Yovanovitch is expected in the second day of public hearings to tell lawmakers about her sudden ouster as President Donald Trump recalled the career ambassador back to the U.S. Vigils are being held in Santa Clarita, California, where a shooter opened fire on the campus of Saugus High School yesterday, killing 2 classmates and wounded 3 others before shooting himself. Today, many schools are closed in Santa Clarita as the big unknown is why the teen shooter allegedly walked onto campus and opened fire. Detectives have been searching the boy's home. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Poll.
Michael Barr, thank you so much. Let's take a quick peek at the bond market. We have the 10-year Treasury down 3/32, pushing that yield up 1 basis point to 1.83%. The 2-year at 1.61%. This is Bloomberg.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills, the kind of skills that companies need to build real products, and the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. We dropped off our Christmas shopping at the hotel. Then it was off to be spellbound at the Theatre Royal Bath. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
Once in a while, a movie comes along that leaves critics and audiences breathless. That movie is Le Mans 66.
We're going to beat Ferrari with a Ford.
Are you nuts?
Starring Academy Award winners Matt Damon and Christian Bale.
They hate guys like us because we're different.
Don't miss the incredible true story of Ford v Ferrari.
Trust me.
It's one of the year's must-see films. It's sensational, a triumph.
Together, we're going to make history.
Le Mans 66.
You're going to want to see this.
In cinemas and IMAX now.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month, £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Briggs.
A few former Uber employees have created a new startup, Virtual Kitchen. It's one of many entrants into the crowded field of companies renting kitchen space to restaurants desperate to satisfy demand from hungry homebodies. But it's particularly noteworthy that the founders came from Uber. Joining us to discuss the space, it is Ken Chong. He's the CEO of Virtual Kitchens. As we know, hugely crowded space. How do you stand out?
Thank you, Taylor. It's a pleasure to be here today. Food delivery is really popular. Consumers continue to love the convenience of it. And we talked to a lot of restaurateurs, and it turns out it's actually very challenging for restaurants who are built for dine-in first with a lot of seating. And so with Virtual Kitchen, we really are trying to make it seamless and turnkey for restaurateurs to expand delivery in a very simple way with very little upfront costs. And of course, bring more selection and great food to more customers.
And you left Uber and Uber Eats in part because you saw the strain that the delivery apps were putting on those restaurants. How are you solving for that strain with your new virtual kitchen?
We build space, operations, and offer help on staffing, menu, and site selection to help them do the best delivery sort of product possible.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and the Bloomberg Futures Report brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new Micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at IBKR.com/CME Mini. And we have breaking economic news crossing the Bloomberg. We go to Vinny Del Giudice with the latest. Vinny, good morning.
Hello, Karen. The General Motors strike threw a wrench into the Federal Reserve's data on industrial production. Output down 0.8% in October, more than forecast. Weakness across the board. Factories, mines, and utilities. Again, industrial output October down 0.8%. I'm Vinny Del Giudice. Karen, back to you.
All right, Vinny, thank you. And futures this morning are on the rise. S&P futures up 10 points. Dow futures up 104. NASDAQ futures up 42. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The DAX in Germany's up about 0.2%. 10-year Treasury down 3/30 seconds. Yield 1.83%. Yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.1% or 7 cents at $56.84 a barrel. COMEX gold down 1/3% or $5.30 at $14.68.10 an ounce. The euro, 1.1043 against the dollar, and the yen is at 108.67. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. This Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by Inovalon, a leading provider of cloud-based platforms empowering data-driven healthcare for insurance companies, physicians, pharmacy, and pharmaceutical companies. Inovalon, data has a story to tell. Inovalon gives it a voice. Well, it is mid-November, and on Wall Street, that means it's bonus time. Start talking about bonuses, fretting about bonuses, obsessing about bonuses, and the news starting to trickle out is not that great. Bloomberg's out with a story today about Credit Suisse is to cut investment banking bonuses and shift capital. To give us a sense of what's going on at Credit Suisse and on the street compensation-wise, we welcome our good friend Shonali Basak from Bloomberg Television News Everything. So, Shonali, what's going on here? We have this Credit Suisse out. Is it surprising that their bonuses are going to be cut?
Listen, on one hand, bonuses are definitely going to be down for the most part on Wall Street. That's what a lot of estimates are thinking, but that's not everywhere. And for investment bankers, there could be some rises. So Credit Suisse is not necessarily going with the grain here. And they had a couple of tough quarters. They had a couple of shakeups at the top as well.
Right. So it's interesting. At Credit Suisse, I used to work there for several years, and the investment bank. I've always kind of thought of it. Credit Suisse as kind of a, within the top 10, they're somewhere in the middle there. They're not the top 2 or 3 or 4 maybe consistently, but they're not at the bottom.
But you know what? They're actually, out of all the European firms right now on M&A league tables, they're leading on deal volumes.
Okay.
Yeah, people don't remember. I forget that sometimes.
Right.
But you're right. They are not at the top. The thing about investment banking is Goldman, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley really lead the pack here. Citigroup comes into a strong fourth, and then you have all the boutique banks on Wall Street really rising here. So that's Evercore, that's PJT, that's Centerview, that's Lazard usually is top 10. But you're right, Credit Suisse has a lot of competition from the U.S. firms and also those smaller rivals.
So think about bonuses. I always think about it. The investment bankers are a certain pool, the fixed income commodities are a pool, and kind of the equities are a pool. When you think, and then there's obviously the private wealth thing, but in the capital markets, those 3 big buckets. Is there a sense of how those across the street are going to do this year?
Yeah, there are. So investment bankers are supposed to do a little better, and this is according to Johnson Associates. I've got to say, in the next couple of weeks, we'll see more figures from different recruiters. I think there's kind of a mixed sense. Equity traders aren't supposed to fare the worst. It's been a tough year, at least in the first 9-10 months. But I've got to say, we did talk to John Waldron, the president of Goldman, about a week ago. And I said, what are you doing? What are you telling your colleagues? And he said, listen, it's November. It's not December yet. The year end is definitely something that people look for. And things are not so bad. Fixed income might be a little better.
So it's interesting. When I worked on Wall Street, about 80% of senior compensation was in the bonus. I think that's changed, right?
It's a little less these days. I mean, there's more salary, right? If you work for a European firm, it's a lot more salary because of certain rules that guide pay there. So firms like Deutsche Bank, that's why people like to stay there, even in the tough times, because more of your bonus isn't salary.
Interesting. So is it still the situation where European investment banks generally pay less than some of the U.S.-based investment banks?
Well, like I said, you're getting bigger base, so you're happier in that sense. I've got to say, what I'm hearing these days a lot of is we're at the end of the cycle. We don't know, as a big European bank with all of these capital rules, whether we want to stay really big in U.S. investment banking to the point that we want to outbid for rainmakers.
Right.
So in that way.
It's interesting. So for every article I see on the Bloomberg terminal about investment banking, Wall Street, compensation under pressure, I see another article about how great things are in the world of private equity. They continue to raise funds of $1 gajillion, and Steven Schwartzman takes on this huge paycheck. How's compensation in the private equity world, broadly speaking?
You know, it's funny. It's good, right? It's not expected to be blowout good for everybody. Remember, Steve Schwartzman is an outlier.
Yep, he sure is.
And the heads of the firms, of course, many of them are billionaires. And among the richest people on all of Wall Street, many of them are on our top 500 richest people in the world.
Right.
And honestly, the headwinds are pretty good because they all converted their stock to C Corps, which means that they can be included in indexes. And that means people who do have exposure to these stocks, and certainly employees, are having a very good year.
So we've seen, like at Deutsche Bank, is probably the most extreme example, really pulling back on a lot of their capital markets in businesses, including U.S. equities and things like that. We're not seeing that at Credit Suisse, are they? They're still fully committed to being a global investment bank?
They are. Something interesting about Credit Suisse in the U.S., they don't have this big wealth management unit, right? You know Credit Suisse globally for that wealth manager.
Right.
But in the U.S., yes, they're investment banking. They're big in leverage finance. They've had shakeups, including their equities division. But yes, no, they're here. They're holding strong. And there's no reason to right now believe that they have any change.
Shonali Basak, thank you so much for joining us. Shonali Basak covers all things Wall Street for Bloomberg Television, news, radio, pretty much everything. She does that for us. Getting interesting story. We're going to hear more and more, I think, over the coming weeks. It just as the calendar goes, you know, kind of the compensation picture coming out of Wall Street on the bonuses. And again, here, Credit Suisse out with some news. Bloomberg reporting that they're going to cut the investment banking bonuses this year, reflecting some continued challenges on Wall Street, and particularly in the capital markets division. So you look at companies, investment banks like Morgan Stanley, that have really beefed up their private wealth management businesses. Those businesses continue to gain assets and I think gain more power within these investment banks. We'll have to see what Credit Suisse does, because they got out of the private wealth business in the U.S. several years ago. But there's been some rumblings that maybe they will try to get back in there. We'll see. But again, compensation under pressure for Wall Street in 2019. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stock futures are higher, just ahead of the opening bell this morning. S&P futures up 10, NASDAQ futures up 42, Dow futures up 102. Crude oil is at $56.86 a barrel. U.S. retail sales rose more than estimated last month, thanks to gains in auto dealership sales and at gas stations, although declines in categories such as clothing and furniture stores did temper the advance. Overall, though, sales were up 0.3%. JCPenney shares are surging before the opening bell. In spite of another quarterly sales drop, the CEO said the turnaround plan was gaining momentum, and JCPenney raised its profit forecast. The futures are also getting a boost on renewed optimism about U.S.-China trade. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said negotiations over the first phase of a trade agreement were coming down to the final stages, with the two sides in close contact. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Next, we donned our skates for Bath on Ice. I'm a natural. Didn't have to hold on to anything or anyone. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
Cold Friday afternoons like this are cruel. You cough, you splutter, so does your car. Its battery dead, killed by an icy claw. Will anyone stand up to winter? Yes, you. Come to Halfords. We fit new batteries on the spot from just £15, and we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Wandsworth. Ready for the cold snap? Ready for anything. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Batteries sold separately. Selected vehicles only in most stores.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There will be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Oh, hello, Steve.
Oh, hi, Mr. Radcliffe.
How did you find yesterday's class on Newton's laws?
Yeah, really interesting. Just getting my teeth into his first law of motion.
Fantastic. Well, any questions, grab me after class tomorrow.
Cool, alright. And here's your Big Mac meal to go.
Cheers, Steve.
At McDonald's, we know juggling study and work can be tricky. That's why our shifts can fit around you. For flexible hours, search McDonald's Jobs. Bright futures are made at McDonald's.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, tune in on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And good morning, I'm Karen Moscow along with Paul Sweeney, and the opening bell brought to you by SEI. Since its founding 50 years ago, SEI has provided investment managers and asset owners with robust infrastructure platforms and flexible outsourcing solutions. Go to SEIC.com/IMS. And the S&P 500 is higher at the open, up 0.4% or 12 points to 3109. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.3% or 100 points to 27,883. And the Nasdaq's up 0.6% or 47 points to 85.27. 10-year Treasury down 6/32, yield 1.84%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.61%. NYMEX crude oil little changed, up 1 cent to 56.78 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.5% on $7.30 at 14.66 an ounce. The euro 1.1040 against the dollar. The yen at 108.75. Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. Well, countries across the globe face a mounting challenge. That's how to offer adequate financial security for retirees today and sustainably into the future. To help us dig into this topic, we welcome Lord Adair Turner. Lord Turner is the Institute for New Economic Thinking Senior Fellow. He's a House of Lords member, Group of 30 member, and former UK Financial Services Authority Chair. Lord Adair, thank you so much for joining us. This is a crucial topic, not just in developed markets, but increasingly in developing markets. Could you scope out for us the issue?
Well, at one level, the issue arises because of a result of two thoroughly good things. People are living longer. Life expectancy is going up across most of the world. And they also have fewer children. We end up with population stabilization, and that's a pretty good thing as well, because it makes it easier to deal with environmental challenges, etc. But those two good things, living longer and having population stabilization, they create a challenge, because if you don't do something to your pension or your lifetime security system in the face of those changes, you are just going to have, more retirees per worker, which either means the workers are going to have to put in significantly more savings or taxation to support longer years in retirement, or retirees are going to be poorer. And I'm afraid there is a sort of relentless mathematical triangular logic here, which is faced with these developments. Either retirement ages have to go up, or people have to put in more money in some way or another to pension systems, or on average, they will be worse off. And the crucial thing that we're saying in this Group of 30 report that we've just published is to set out that logic, to illustrate it in multiple countries, and to say there has to be a more robust engagement with this by policymakers throughout the world. Well, what you can't propose is what is the single perfect solution to be pursued in each country, because the solution in each country has to reflect its own political dynamics, its starting point. But the fundamental nature of the challenge and the three possible solutions at the most generic level, they are common across the world.
So the issue seems to be common across the world, as you mentioned. Do we have any examples of any countries that are actually tackling this issue with some success?
Well, I would say that Sweden has made some sensible policies. What it has done is it has a tier of its state system, which it calls a notional defined contribution system. So it's still a pay-as-you-go, paid for by a compulsory contribution system. But within that, it said, look, we're not going to tell you in advance what your retirement age is going to be. Your future retirement age is going to reflect the increases in life expectancy which occur between now and when you get to retirement. And by the way, we'll give you some trade-offs. You can take retirement a bit earlier, but you'll have to face a lower cost there, or delay it a few years and you'll get a higher pension. So that's quite a sensible idea. My own country, the UK, as a result of a pension commission which I chaired 10 years ago, is now committed to increasing the state pension age within our state pension system. We are going to take that up from 65 in 2010. It'll be 66 by next year, and it'll reach 68 by the mid-2030s. And that has actually enabled us to provide a slightly more generous pension, but at a later date. And then there are other countries around the world. I would say Singapore, with its large form of compulsory savings, has provided a significant amount of security for many of its citizens. And I think what intelligent policymakers do is not believe that they can go to any one country and say, let me copy that, but look around the world at different examples of how different countries have addressed particular parts of the issue, and then try to work out what is the best combination of solutions given one's particular national starting point.
So, Lord Turner, in the United States, this country, as you are, I'm sure, well aware, has moved away from the defined benefit pensions that were kind of my parents' generation, if you will, and more towards, kind of user savings, whether it's 401ks or something along those lines, individual savings. Where is a country like the United States in terms of this global issue of we're living longer, we might not have enough money?
Well, you, of course, do have a social security system, and unlike, for instance, in healthcare, where you have an extremely, limited state, private market solution, social security is actually, a very robust state-driven, government-driven, federal government-driven system, and I think actually, the absolute linchpin of your system, because it provides a base load for many people of low and modest income to at least get up to adequacy, and I certainly wouldn't move away from that. And you have taken some moves to, over time in future, increase the effective retirement age within that. If you go to the private space of how people then provide additional pension provision on top of the basic social security, of course, you are quite right. You have seen, like many other countries have seen, a very significant move away from defined benefit schemes provided by employers. And I think that was bound to occur in the way that defined benefit schemes were designed in the past, because they just placed too much risk on the employer. The employer took all of the risk of what was the market rate of return on the investments, because the pension that got paid out was independent of that return, and the employer took all of the risks of whether life expectancy went up faster than was anticipated when somebody originally joined the scheme. And it's a bit tragic. What has happened across the world is that, as it were, over gold-plated employer private defined benefit schemes have tended to close. And in a sense, we've moved to the other extreme, where individuals take all of the risk. If their life expectancy rises, they're going to have to deal with all of that. If the investment returns are less than they anticipated, they will have to deal with that. One of the points we make in the report is that one could think of hybrid solutions. One could think of forms of employer-provided pensions which provide an element, a sort of guaranteed bit of defined benefit, but where the amount that you get on top of that depends upon the investment return on the funded assets. And for instance, the Netherlands has systems like that. So in a sense, I think what we would encourage people is to look at these
Lord Turner, thank you,
and whether there's a better balance.
Lord Turner, we're going to have to cut it short there. We could talk about this for a long time. A looming issue, pensions across the world. Lord Adair Turner, Institute for New Economic Thinking Senior Fellow, Group of 30 member, former UK Financial Services Authority Chair, talking to us about long-term pensions. This is Bloomberg. Let's get national headlines right now with Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you very much, Paul. The House Intelligence Committee's second public hearing today features testimony by former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, who was removed from that post in May by President Donald Trump. Democratic Chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff.
The woman known for fighting corruption, his own former ambassador, the woman ruthlessly smeared and driven from her post, the president does nothing but disparage, or worse, threaten. Well, she's going to go through some things, the president declares. That tells you a lot about the president's priorities and intentions.
The committee's top Republican, Devin Nunes, opened by accusing Democrats of mounting an operation to topple a duly elected president. A classmate of the 16-year-old accused of shooting fellow students at a Los Angeles area high school says the suspect seemed like one of those normal kids. Authorities say the teen seemed to target people at random when he opened fire on his birthday yesterday, killing 2 teens and wounding 3 others before shooting himself in the head. He is in critical condition. Classes at Saugus High School have been canceled today. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Paul.
Thank you so much, Michael Barr. The markets are open here 10 minutes into trading. We have the S&P up 10 points, the Dow up 91 points, NASDAQ up 39. Risk on day today. We have some positive trade talk. That's what the markets need. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
This is a Bloomberg.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The world is a noisy place, but whether I'm here or here, my phone calls are always loud and clear on my Doro 6620. Hi, love. Yes, I can hear you perfectly. I'm 10 minutes away. Get your Doro 6620 from Amazon, Tesco and O2 today.
This Black Friday, get Sky Entertainment for £22 a month, then feel it all with a spectacular 50% off Sky Sports, including the Manchester Derby and the darts. Build your perfect bundle today. Choose any or all of our Sky TV packages and get an incredible 50% off. Hurry, join today. Visit sky.com. Offer ends 2nd of December. New 18-month minimum terms or 31 days notice to cancel depending on package. Discount on standard pricing with same minimum terms. Set up £25. Kit loaned at no cost.
It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update.
Simon Cowell thinks One Direction will do a reunion tour. E! quotes Simon as saying, "My gut feeling is yes. I mean, they're all doing great solo-wise at the moment, but they had a lot of hits. So they could do a tour after tour after tour." Meanwhile, Yahoo News claims Billie Eilish and Urban Outfitters have teamed up for a new clothing collection. Billie's line includes t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, and shorts. To hear more music from One Direction and Billie Eilish, search today's hits on TuneIn.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, House impeachment inquiry. I'm Christopher Cruz. The former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, will testify before the House Intelligence Committee this morning. The committee chaired by Congressman Adam Schiff, who said moments ago Yovanovitch was treated badly by the president during a phone call in July with Ukraine's leader.
The woman known for fighting corruption, his own former ambassador, the woman ruthlessly smeared and driven from her post, the president does nothing but disparage. Or worse, threaten. Well, she's going to go through some things, the president declares. That tells you a lot about the president's priorities and intentions.
An embassy official who says he overheard President Trump on a phone call talk about putting pressure on Ukraine to investigate his political opponent will testify before congressional investigators behind closed doors later today. I'm Christopher Cruz.
They like new developments.
This is an industry that is in demand.
They love telling you about all of them.
What will society ultimately decide?
Carol Messer and Jason Kelly. Bloomberg Business Week, weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and this update is brought to you by Interactive Brokers, the professional's gateway to the world's markets, introducing IBKR Lite, offering investors $0 commissions on U.S.-listed stocks and ETFs. Learn more at ibkr.com/LITE. And U.S. retail sales rose more than estimated in October on gains from auto dealers and gas stations, though declines in categories including clothing and furniture stores tempered the advance. The value of overall sales increased 0.3% after an unrevised 0.3% drop the prior month. Meanwhile, U.S. manufacturing output slumped in October by the most in 6 months as an auto workers' strike at General Motors curtailed vehicle production and the trade war continued to weigh on other factories. Stocks rising with the S&P 500 reaching a record and treasuries falling after U.S. officials hinted that the U.S. and China are close to locking down a partial trade deal. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 up 1/3% or 10 points at 3107. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1/3% or 96 points at 27,876. And the Nasdaq's up 0.5% or 38 points to 8518. 10-year Treasury down 4/32, yield 1.83%. Yield on the 2-year 1.61%. NYMEX crude oil up 1/3% or 20 cents at 56.97 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.5% or $7.60 at 14.65.90 an ounce. The euro at 1.1045 against the dollar. The yen at 108.73. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. Just taking a look at JCPenney, beleaguered at JCPenney. Stock's only got a market cap of $380 million. That just shocks me. But they had better than expected results this morning. Up their profit forecast. Stock's up 9% today. Let's get some latest here on what JCPenney is doing as it tries to deal with the retail apocalypse. JCPenney, Jordan Holman, thanks so much for joining us. Jordan Holman covers all things retail for Bloomberg News. So, Jordan, what did you see coming out of JCPenney this quarter?
So like you said, they did raise their profit forecast, but that does not take away that foot traffic is falling for that department store, and it was the 5th straight quarter of comparable sales decline, which is a very important metric. So their CEO has been in the position for a year. We're starting to see some of the changes that she's making, new store formats. They're doing visual merchandising again, which means, setting up the floor to make people want to buy there. But they're part of a larger department store landscape that's not too strong right now.
So for JCPenney, and I guess across the retail landscape, we've heard, time and again that this industry is still overstored. They need to shut down more and more stores. Where's JCPenney in that regard when you take a look at their footprint?
Yeah, they have more than 800 stores across the U.S., and a lot of analysts think that's too many stores. On the earnings call today, that was one of the main questions that people were asking Jill Soltau, their CEO. Right now, JCPenney says they don't have plans to change their store fleet, but there's this looking and monitoring to see which stores are strong, and maybe they'll announce things later.
How's their digital strategy? Because we saw the Walmart numbers out earlier this week with their earnings, and their digital sales are up 41% in the quarter. It's better than Amazon. How's JCPenney doing?
It's difficult to compare JCPenney's e-commerce with Walmart's because the company does not break out e-commerce sales. That was another big question that analysts have for them because obviously e-commerce is becoming more and more important in this landscape, and especially if you're trying to draw new customers. So we don't have great clarity on what they're doing there. But the company in the past has said a lot of their purchases will start online and then it will draw people into the store.
So that's that omni-channel strategy.
Exactly.
Now, do you think that's working? So that's you integrate omni-channel is integrating your digital, your mobile, bricks and mortar, and all that kind of stuff. Do you think JCPenney has a decent omni-channel strategy?
So their CEO has already said they did not have a strong omni-channel, but they're really trying to work on that. That's part of their turnaround strategy, making sure that it's a seamless experience across the board. So as they're looking at their store formats, they're also looking at their website and making sure that people don't feel frustration or friction, as they say, across those channels.
So this is a company, again, I noted the market cap of $380 billion. This is are there concerns and ongoing concern issues here for this company? Are there some people that believe that this company is really at the brink of maybe a bankruptcy or significant restructuring?
They have a lot of debt, and that's something that analysts and investors are keeping their eye on. The company says they feel comfortable with their liquidity and that they're seeing that stay the same as last quarter. But that's also top of mind for them. And looking at the investments in the stores, they say they feel pretty good about the investments they're making, but the debt is something that's always going to be a question.
Yeah, looking at this, I guess at the February quarter, or actually the November quarter, about almost $5 billion in total debt. So is the expectation here that this is the management team that can turn it around?
That's the big question. They've had a revolving door of managers, but Jill Soltau has done a great job of bringing on a lot of experts from Target and Macy's and just bringing in people who have a lot of expertise in this. And so hopefully her team will be the one that turns everything around. But there's just a lot of woes that this company is facing.
And I can just tell you, looking at the ANR function on the Bloomberg terminal, the sell side is not buying it. 0 buys, 7 holds, and 4 sells. So this is very much a show me story, I guess.
Exactly. And Jill Soltau has said, as a CEO, I'm trying to do and then tell later.
Gotcha. Jordan Holman, thank you so much for joining us. Jordan Holman covers all things retail for Bloomberg News, giving us the latest on JCPenney and maybe a little bit of a green shoots there for the company. Let's switch gears as we like to do on Fridays. We are approaching week 11 of the NFL season. Start getting ready for fantasy playoffs. There's nobody better to talk to than Rich Truman. Rich is the producer of Bloomberg Surveillance, and he also writes a great column for Bloomberg News talking about fantasy football. So, Rich, what I love about your picks are the value picks. These are the ones that are not the easy one. Like anybody could pick Tom Brady, I guess, every week. Talk to us about some of your value picks here.
I'm going to start off with a real long shot, and most people probably have never heard of them.
Okay.
The worst team in the NFL this year, arguably, is the Cincinnati. Giants also.
Jets. Okay.
The Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay.
The winless Cincinnati Bengals. They are playing the Oakland Raiders this week. So most people would stay away from people in Cincinnati, but a couple of things why I'm taking a long shot. Ryan Finley, who I'm sure most people have never heard of, is the quarterback of the Bengals. Oakland has the third worst pass defense in the league. They've allowed 24 touchdowns this year. Oakland will probably come out to a lead. They're favored by over 10 points. Cincinnati's probably going to have to play from behind. So as a value pick, if you do the weekly fantasy leagues, I like the quarterback Ryan Finley, and I like their wide receiver Boyd. So those are two guys, Tyler Boyd and Finley, that I think if you want to take a chance, those would be good value picks this week.
Interesting. So how do you define a value pick?
Well, everybody could pick the Saquon Barkleys and the Alvin Kamaras and the Christian McCaffreys, at least. So I'm going for guys who are not rated so high. And what I try to do a lot of times, I try to look at the opponents. I look at kind of the worst defenses. Like, for example, the Giants are off this week, have given up the most points in the league, 289 points through 10 games. So that's 28 points a game. The Cardinals have given up 281 points. The Bucs have given up 279 points. So I do look for teams that play against them and players on their teams because they're usually generally involved in high-scoring games.
So Phillip Rivers is a name I recognize. Why is he a value pick for you guys?
Well, he's not rated that highly among quarterbacks if you look at the daily sites. But Kansas City puts up over 30 points a game. They usually give up around close to 28, 30 points a game. So, and the games it's in Mexico, so nobody has a home field advantage. So I'm expecting that game to be a high-scoring game. So I think he might have a good game through the air.
So you don't have Tom Brady on here, the value picks, understood, but you've got his running back, right?
Yeah, they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles, who are one of the better teams against the rush. And what they do a lot in the playoffs and the Super Bowl is they throw the ball a lot to their running back. I think they're going to have a very hard time running against Philadelphia. Their running back, James White, is an excellent pass catcher out of the backfield. I think he's going to have at least 7 to 10 catches in this game because I think they're not going to be able to run the ball. They're going to have to go through short passes like they usually do.
All right, so we got a couple to focus on, a couple of value picks. How'd you do last week?
Last week I had a couple of good ones, a mixed bag, but my best ones were Christian Kirk, which we talked about last week. He ended up having 3 touchdowns for the Cardinals. I touted Sam Darnold, who had 2 touchdowns for the Jets. Derrick Henry, who some might argue is not really a value pick, but he was going against Kansas City, who, as I said before, has a poor defense. He had 188 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And then Taylor Gabriel, who was on the Bears, his quarterback had only thrown 5 touchdown passes the entire year. He threw 3 against Detroit, and he actually had a score with 4 catches.
Cool. All right, so we'll pay attention. Gives you something, a little skin in the game. And we know a lot of people are looking at this fantasy stuff more and more, even when now we have sports betting across the country. Rich Truman, thanks so much for joining us. Rich is the producer of Bloomberg Surveillance. He is also a fantasy football fanatic. The people are all over the place. This column on the Bloomberg News gets a lot of readership, particularly as we approach the playoffs for the NFL. Looking at the markets right here, we are still green on the screen. We have the S&P up 9, the Dow up 76, NASDAQ up 32 points. That's almost 0.4%. Looking at the yield market, the 10-year Treasury yield down 3/30 seconds, pushing that yield up on the 10-year to 1.83%. We have a little bit of steepness in the yield curve with the 2-year at 1.61%. Also like to look at energy right here. We have WTI crude just up slightly, $56.84 per barrel. Brent crude up 7 cents to $62.34 a barrel. The dollar slightly weaker today, the dollar index. We've got the pound up a little bit against the dollar. The euro pretty much up a little bit against the dollar as well. So again, green on the screen, positive trade rhetoric coming out of Washington. We're still waiting for a document. You're listening to Bloomberg Surveillance. Good morning.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole-in-one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition. For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked breads to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years.
What we see more bonds, more yield.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Friday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. It is Friday. We made it to the weekend. Coming up, we're going to take a look on the U.S.-China trade deal. There's lots of rhetoric coming out of Washington. There is not an agreement yet. We'll get the latest. Plus, we'll also get an update on the impeachment hearings. They are taking place right now in Washington, D.C. We'll get the latest there. But first, let's go to Karen Moscow of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Karen.
All right, Paul, thank you. And not only did you make it to the weekend, but The S&P 500 is at another record. Treasuries are falling, meanwhile, after a U.S. official hinted that the U.S. and China are close to locking down a partial trade deal. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 is up 0.25% or 8 points at 3105. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.25% or 78 points at 27,862. And the Nasdaq's up 0.33% or 30 points to 8509. 10-year Treasury down 230 seconds. The yield 1.82% and the yield on the 2-year 1.61%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.2% or 13 cents at 56.88 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.4% or $6.20 at 14.6730 an ounce. The euro 1.1048 against the dollar. The yen at 108.72. Sources tell Bloomberg Credit Suisse Group expects to cut bonuses at its investment banking and capital markets division and reallocate capital to higher growth areas after a slowdown in deal making. Separately, Credit Suisse says investor appetite for risk that has sent equity markets to record highs has the potential to extend into next year. JCPenney shares up more than 9% after the company raised its profit forecast, even amid another quarterly sales decline as the battered department store chain's turnaround plan gains more time to play out. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul.
Thank you so much, Karen Moscow. Bloomberg Markets brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the 6th straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit Commonwealth.com to learn more. A lift to markets here, as Karen was talking about, the Nasdaq up 0.4%, as we do get some positive signals from the White House about China-U.S. trade negotiations. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, joining us here in our Interactive Brokers studios, and I'm trying to understand. It's not just that. We're also getting, for example, Grubhub surging. You're getting a recommendation from one investment bank that Uber shares are going to double in upcoming years. I'm trying to understand this bout of optimism suddenly. It goes beyond just trade, right?
It does, and you've got some earnings reports that are being well received on top of that, notably Applied Materials. And bear in mind, this is a company that makes chip production equipment. So you figure if they're doing okay, then maybe the chip makers will be doing okay down the line. And that's an issue because they have had, some weakness in demand recently. And so we got the numbers late yesterday out of Applied Materials for their fiscal fourth quarter. You had earnings beating analysts' highest estimate in the Bloomberg survey. Revenue surpassing projections as well. Bear in mind, they were down. They just weren't down as much. So, that's part of the mix, too. Then again, Applied Materials sales forecast for the fiscal first quarter also beat estimates. So, you put it all together, you've got a stock that's up more than 8%. That, you look at the S&P 500 right now, and it is the top performer, and it's not even close. So, because the other side of that is NVIDIA's down because they were disappointing in terms of their sales forecast. Initially, people didn't really know what to make of it, in a sense, because the third quarter results beat estimates. So the stock sounded a little changed early on. Now it's decisively lower at this point. So it's going to take some time for things to come around, but at least the pluses are out there in enough quantity to push stocks higher.
It's interesting. The economic data that came out this morning seems to confirm what we already know, which is we had the U.S. factory output drops by the most since April, due in part to the GM strike. But then we had retail sales that still showed some strength, and that's kind of what we've been seeing in this economy, really, for the last year plus. Manufacturing, business investment, a little bit challenged, a little bit beleaguered, yet the consumer still in pretty good shape.
And, of course, the consumer represents the majority of the U.S. economy. You have to bear that in mind. I mean, the exact percentage, it depends whether you really think healthcare belongs there, because that's part of it. And you can argue whether that's really, sort of all that subject to demand. But at the same time, you can argue that, there has been sort of a shift toward a more optimistic economic view in the past few weeks. And that's played out in terms of how stocks are doing here.
I would argue that the tilt right now is that President Trump wants to get some sort of trade relief ahead of the 2020 election, that they're banking on that sort of coming through and making this happen, period, and full stop. Because when I'm talking with investment advisors, they say that it is a game changer if there is no trade truce in any way, shape, or form, and that if that were to happen, you would see a dramatic reversal. So it's not just, that people are sort of, either way, things look better. A lot of people are saying if there is no trade deal, chips come off the table pretty quickly.
I mean, what it comes down to, arguably, is what kind of shape is the economy going to be in next year? Because, we've seen in the past that during periods of economic growth, people tend to favor incumbents in the presidency. And we've seen the opposite be the case when you have recessions going on. So maybe that's as much as anything what's driving, the way things are unfolding here in terms of trade. But, at the very least, I mean, there is that concern that this economic expansion, which is now in its 11th year, right? How does it play out from here? And a big piece of that is going to be how those trade talks unfold.
It's interesting. Bloomberg News is out with a story today. Buy triple C's as the credit cycle has years to run, Northern Trust says. So here's Northern Trust, $430 billion in assets. Colin Robinson, the head of fixed income for Northern Trust, saying, take on some more risk. This economic cycle's got more to go.
Triple C rated debt, that's pretty low on the totem pole, no question. And look, it's understandable because we still live in a low yield sort of world if you're looking at bonds, sure. I mean, we know that the total amount of negative yielding debt below zero around the world has fallen lately. That said, you look at a 10-year treasury at the moment yielding less than 2%. And you've still got a situation where stocks, if you look at those dividends, you have to see the appeal. I mean, 1.86% right now on the S&P 500, and that's just above what we're seeing on the 10-year Treasury. So clearly, the higher yielding sort of areas, utilities and real estate, I mean, just on the face of it, may well look attractive, though investors have kind of pulled away from them the past few weeks in favor of those that are more economically sensitive. But there are a lot of reasons why, stocks are doing well here.
I will say, though, with the triple C rated debt, it has lagged behind dramatically, and its yields price in more of a recession type risk than all other debt. So the idea that people are going into it is capitulation to sort of the risk aversion that we saw earlier in the year. And I do have to wonder how this is a big story of capitulation on the fear of missing out on a rally that has been tremendous this year, which then leads to the question of, is this setting the market up for a fall if you're getting finally the capitulation? And so that's something that we will continue to dig into. Last thoughts, Dave Wilson, JCPenney.
Well, I mean, it's at $1.20 a share, so you can only say so much about it. That said, it is up 9%.
There you go.
It's been a decent week for retailers. Walmart's earnings well received. JCPenney now. You also had Dillard's, smaller chain, out with numbers this week. Shares were up 14% in the wake of their results. And next week, it's all about retailers, whether you look at the home improvement chains, the department stores, the off-price retailers, or the likes of, the Gap and limited brands.
Right, exactly. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We'll be chatting with you next week on those retail earnings to get a continued look at the U.S. consumer. How's the consumer behaving? We had some decent retail sales out today. Obviously, the job picture looks good. The wage growth is okay. But overall, the consumer is the bulwark of this economy as we, again, got some more weak manufacturing data today. So, again, more and more pressure on the consumer. This is Bloomberg.
Let's head over to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Police of the House Intelligence Committee is hearing right now from the former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. She is assailing what she calls corrupt Ukrainians who organized a smear campaign that persuaded President Trump to fire her. Let's get the latest live from Capitol Hill. House impeachment hearings with Bloomberg's Irv Chapman. Irv.
Nathan, Yovanovitch spoke of corrupt Iranian prosecutors who organized a campaign of disinformation against her and found Americans to help, notably Rudy Giuliani.
Leaders that are honest and trustworthy make better partners for us. What had been happening since the Soviet Union, and this is very much a Soviet legacy, is that corrupt interests were undermining not only the governance but also the economy of Ukraine.
Ranking Republican Devin Nunes, in his opening statement, said it was Ukraine that interfered in the 2016 U.S. election. Nathan?
And Irv, as the former ambassador is testifying, President Trump is reacting on Twitter, writing, quote, "Everywhere Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad," end quote. He goes on to cite her record in Somalia, saying Ukrainian President Zelensky spoke unfavorably of her in their July 25th phone call. The president says it is his absolute right to appoint ambassadors. And as the hearing began, the White House released a summary of the president's first phone call with Zelensky. That conversation took place in April, shortly after Zelensky was elected. The release is part of a White House effort to show that the president's interactions with Ukraine's government aren't impeachable. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Full breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever you have in the morning, have it at daybreak.
What's the outlook for the pound if there is another election?
Nathan Hager.
The U.S. could still delay those tariffs?
And Karen Moscow.
It is the fifth major industry player to make some sort of zero commission offer.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative, and that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
Join us in New York City on November 21st as Bloomberg Pursuits convenes the second annual The Year Ahead Luxury. Speakers include Jennifer Hyman, CEO Rent the Runway, Alessandro Bogliolo, CEO Tiffany & Company, Robert A.M. Stern, renowned architect. Supporting sponsor, Diamond Producers Association. Participating sponsor, St. Regis Hotels and Resorts. For more information, go to BloombergLive.com/TYA Luxury. Invitation code RADIO.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition. For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked bread to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The world is a noisy place, but whether I'm here
or here. My phone calls are always loud and clear on my Doro 6620. Hi, love. Yes, I can hear you perfectly. I'm 10 minutes away. Get your Doro 6620 from Amazon, Tesco, and O2 today.
Waiting for a phone that makes everything look crystal clear, like a brilliant iPhone 8 with Retina display? The wait is over. Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event is on. This week, get an iPhone 8 for just $23.49 a month, a saving of £144. Get yours by 17th of November. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £27.49, now £23.49. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
With the new Halifax Family Boost mortgage, children can get help to buy their first home, and mum and dad earn interest on their savings. Everyone's a winner. The new Halifax Family Boost mortgage. Halifax makes it happen.
Your home and savings could be at risk if mortgage repayments are not maintained. Only available in England and Wales. One applicant must hold a Halifax Reward or Ultimate Reward current account. Conditions and exclusions apply.
This is the sound of festive fun in London. You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are up, treasuries down after an American official hinted the U.S. and China are close to locking down a partial trade deal. We look at those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.4%, up 11. Dow's up 0.4%, up 114, and the Nasdaq's up 0.5%, up 42. The 10-year is down 3/30 seconds. The yield 1.82%. West Texas Intermediate's up 0.6% at 57.10 a barrel, while COMEX Gold's down 0.4% at 14.6720 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 108.73. The euro $1.1051. The British pound $1.2914. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
The signs are more positive that the kinks are just being worked out between the U.S. and China, and that a phase one deal is imminent. Joining us here is Michael McKee. He is our chief international economics and policy correspondent for Bloomberg Radio, Television, and News. Mike, how positive is this?
Not going to judge one way or another. I mean, this is just one of those instances where you can fool Wall Street all the time. It was
on a daily basis.
Just yesterday, the day before was the Dow Jones headline that we've hit a snag, and
soybeans.
But now it's the final stages.
Now it's the final. Who knows? I think, and I've said this all along. When they get a deal and announce a deal, then there's a deal. But until then, there's no deal. The Chinese have not been as effusive as Larry Kudlow was last night, to the extent that Larry was effusive about it. They say they're still working on it. So we don't know. Trade deals take a very long time. They are considered one of the most boring things in the world to report on, and I've had the honor of reporting on them for a number of decades. They're devilishly complicated, and it's not easy to bring them to a conclusion. So I think the minute-to-minute headline reaction aspect of it is kind of silly. They may be making progress, but until a deal's a deal, there's no deal.
So what do you think is happening on the Chinese side? I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of how critical a deal is for China, or can they just wait?
Well, it's hard to know exactly, because we don't know what the political pressures inside the Communist Party are on President Xi. He doesn't have the electoral pressures, but he does have party Congress that kind of wants to know what's going on, and they have seen the economy slow down. So there are some pressures on him. Can he withstand them? We don't know. We do know that he does not want to make a deal with the president that makes China look bad or him look weak. So he needs something from the United States. It can't be just all China giving, and he wants, as we understand it, some sort of rollback in tariffs. Well, what does that mean? We don't really know. Just preventing the tariffs that were supposed to go into place on December 15th, rolling back the tariffs from September, rolling back the tariffs from August. That is all part of the negotiation. And then on the U.S. side, if we roll back those tariffs, how do we guarantee that you're going to follow through with what you say you're going to do? I'm trying to wrap soybeans into final discussions. Well, there was a story out of China this morning that it's going to be very hard for the Chinese to meet this $50 billion gain in U.S. sales that the president is talking about. And the Chinese say, we never agreed to any specific dollar value. One of the problems is try to gauge what demand is going to be down the road and from whom you're going to get it. They have a problem because there's swine fever that's killed a lot of pigs. So they need pork. But because they don't have a lot of pigs, they don't need as many soybeans. So how do you square all that? How do you make it work? The other thing is do the Chinese really want to buy that much stuff from one country, which could then just turn off the taps at any time? If they destroy their sales linkages with other countries, the sales relationships, then they need something because the United States won't sell it to them. Are they going to be able to get it? You want to diversify. So the Chinese are not as on board with the ag purchase aspect of it as maybe the administration wants us to think.
So I can't remember when, but let's call it just a couple of months ago, the narrative was that the Chinese were just going to wait till after the 2020 election because maybe they couldn't trust President Trump to withhold the deal. What's happened to that narrative?
It's still around. Okay. They're obviously, I can't say how much weight they put on it, but obviously it is an idea that from their point of view might make some sense. You have to keep in mind, though, that all the Democrats are agreed with the president that China has cheated. China, it doesn't play by the rules, the global rules of trade, and something needs to be done about it. The difference is in tactics and strategy rather than the underlying problem. So it may not be in China's advantage. Maybe it's in China's advantage to keep dealing with President Trump if they think they can get around him, because suppose the Democrat comes in and gets a worldwide coalition going against the Chinese and makes it worse for them. So it's hard to know how much that is realistic, but it's still a theory.
Michael McKee, thank you for wrapping up what will be yet another episode in the sclerotic negotiations. Michael McKee is the Bloomberg International Economics and Policy correspondent for us here at Bloomberg. And I will just say there was an incredibly good graphic on the Bloomberg Today and on Bloomberg.com showing how much exports to China from U.S. states have fallen year over year in September. And you could see it's just dramatic, almost 40%. Actually, from Texas, right, because of the oil and gas, actually, yes, in particular. Interesting. Okay. And you do have to wonder how much this would have happened anyway, but certainly the trade tensions are accelerating some of the declines. But it is interesting what Mike was saying, which is that there is the desire to diversify in China. Right now, let's get the latest on the impeachment hearings from Nathan Hager in Washington, D.C. Nathan.
Lisa, former Ukraine Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch is testifying right now before the House Intelligence Committee. She says she was the victim of corrupt forces that undermined the State Department and led to her early ouster.
How could our system fail like this? How is it that foreign corrupt interests could manipulate our government? Which country's interests are served when the very corrupt behavior we have been criticizing is allowed to prevail?
Ranking Republican Devin Nunes says the entire impeachment probe is about one thing: disparaging President Trump.
But I'm glad that on Wednesday, after the Democrats staged 6 weeks of secret depositions in the basement of the Capitol, like some kind of strange cult, The American people finally got to see this farce for themselves.
And as Yovanovitch testifies, President Trump is reacting on Twitter, writing, quote, "Everywhere Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad," end quote. He says it's his absolute right to appoint ambassadors. A longtime staffer at the White House Budget Office, meanwhile, is reportedly expected to break ranks and testify behind closed doors tomorrow. Mark Sandy would be the first employee at the Office of Management and Budget to give a deposition. We'll have a live report in 15 minutes. Bloomberg Terminal customers can watch the impeachment hearings on Live Go. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks on the rise. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said talks over the first phase of an agreement with China were coming down to the final stages. JCPenney shares surging after the company raised its profit forecast, even with another quarterly sales decline. The report shows it's making progress in improving its operations, and that's cheering investors on. Some flight attendants at American Airlines say they're scared at the prospect of resuming flights on the Boeing 737 MAX as the jet moves closer to a return. Their union said some cabin crew members have asked not to work aboard the plane if and when it wins regulatory approval. And Taylor Swift is begging asset management firm Carlyle Group to help her in a dispute over her past hits. Swift has accused her former record label of blocking her from performing her old songs at an award show. Carlyle Group is involved because, according to Swift, it put up the money for her former agent and a partner to buy the songs. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The world is a noisy place, but whether I'm here or here, my phone calls are always loud and clear on my Doro 6620. Hi, love. Yes, I can hear you perfectly. I'm 10 minutes away. Get your Doro 6620 from Amazon, Tesco, and O2 today.
It's one small step for man, one giant shop. Sorry, 2 giant shops a month at 10% off with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and double data from Tesco Mobile, all for $7.99 every month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only, Club Card app required, exclusions apply, double data only on pay monthly, home from home destinations. First payment payable up front, subject to status, see online for details.
This is the sound of festive fun in London. You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Hey, can't watch the big NBA game because your life's just too busy? I've got some news for you. TuneIn Premium is the answer to all your problems. Hear every home and away game live or on demand everywhere you go. Just search NBA to listen.
College football is live on TuneIn.
Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard. Somebody stays on his feet and scores. Touchdown.
The top of the Big 12 is at stake. Reigning champion Oklahoma travels to Waco, Texas to take on the surprising undefeated Baylor Bears. The action kicks off this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Sit on the couch and get everything that you want to eat economy. We're going to be speaking about food delivery services coming up. Plus, we're going to take a look at the consumer signs today with retail sales slowing just a touch, giving some economists some concern. Right now, though, let's head over to our own Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Lisa, the S&P's up for another record and its sixth weekly gain in a row, which will be the longest streak in 2 years. All this comes after White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow says negotiations between the USA and China are coming down to the final stages. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.4%, up 12. Dow's up 0.4%, up 115, and the Nasdaq's up 0.5%, up 42. 10 years down 230 seconds. The yield is 1.82%. West Texas Intermediate crude is now up 0.8% at 57.24 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.3% at 14.6860 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 108.74. The euro $1.10.53. The British pound $1.2908. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Food delivery business, it seems like there's so many competitors out there, DoorDash, Uber Eats. We have Adam Price, CEO of Waiter Holdings. Adam, thanks so much for joining us. So in this food delivery business, first of all, tell us about Waiter Holdings. Tell us about the history of the company and kind of your strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So Waiter was founded in Louisiana, and we focus on small, medium-sized markets around the U.S. So whereas in the big cities, you have the big companies like DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, in the small cities around the U.S., you have Waiter, and we operate another brand called Bite Squad.
There's a feeling that there's been too much hopium around food delivery services. And I'm sure you've read all of these articles, and I'm sure you shake your head and you say, they just don't get it. What do you think right now of some of the backlash that we've been getting from all of the investment in food delivery services?
Yeah, it's a great question. The real crux of the arguments right now is what is the sustainability of the space? You know, if consumers are expecting free delivery and you have to take a portion of the sale value from the restaurant, you know, where does this space live in its entirety? There's been so much money that's flown into it. And are these businesses sustainable, and can they be profitable? And we really feel at Waiter the focus needs to be around consistency and really aiming for a consistent customer experience so the customers stay sticky to the platform and stop jumping around from platform to platform, and then focusing on the operational efficiency in order for the sustainability and the long-term profitability of the business.
There's consistency that's important. So is making money. And that's proven to be difficult given the fact that there is competition, including getting in your car or using your legs and going and getting the food yourself, right?
Right.
I mean, how have you found profitability to be?
Well, There's a clear shift in the consumers willing to pay for convenience. So the competition of a consumer going to pick it up, that is a clear deviation in what you're seeing in terms of consumer behavior. People are willing to value their time. They're willing to pay for convenience. So food delivery isn't going anywhere. The question is what makes it sustainable and profitable. And in our system, what really drives that profitability is the attachment of the customer base. You can't continuously be paying to acquire new customers, and that's really done through consistency. And then the streamlining of the operations, and that's what gets you to that profitability. And one of the items we use, which is dramatically different than our competitors, is we use W-2 drivers as opposed to contractors, which allows us to pull some of those operating levers that I can get into details if you like.
All right, so let's talk about profitability. I'm looking at the Bloomberg terminal right now, the FA function, and Waiter Holdings is not profitable. We even had, and you guys have been in the business for a few years. I'm looking at the forecast for 2020, still not forecasted to be profitable. I look at Uber, which has got scale out the wazoo. They even say that their Uber Eats business is the weaker and the least profitable relative to their ride business. What is the model to profitability? What levers have to be pulled?
Well, there's a couple things. All of these groups just exploded in growth because of geographic expansion. And you have to be in step one in being profitable is realizing, what markets do you have that put you on a path to scale and profitability that allow you to operationalize and bring in that sustainability with that scale. So one of the things we've actually done recently is pulled back on our market share or on our markets. We closed 38 markets that will be finishing in the next 15 days or so that we announced in our last quarterly call. You have to be very careful not to be overextended in this space.
What's interesting to me also is how the consumer accesses Waiter, right? I mean, do they go to Waiter's website or do they go to the restaurant that they want to order from, and then there's a tab from Waiter? So which is it?
It's both. Okay. You're trying to acquire customers in multiple fronts. We have a mobile application, just like most of the players in this space. We also put order now buttons on the restaurant's website, which drive people to download the mobile app. So there's multiple channels, but the primary channel that we receive all our orders is the mobile application.
So it's interesting. So Uber Eats, some of these bigger market ones, Grubhub, are you finding that they are now coming down into your mid and small size markets? And if so, how do you compete against those big companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you've seen is that, in an effort to continue the rapid revenue growth, geographic expansion has been the primary tactic. So you have almost in all of our markets, you have 2 to 3 primary players now in food delivery. You have Grub, Uber, Waiter, or Grub, DoorDash, Waiter. So you see multiple players in every market. The key to owning that market, again, is around consistency of customer experience. Anybody can go into a market and start offering customers free food, and they're going to get customers. If you don't have to pay for delivery, you're going to start using or trying the platform. What's critical is the way to retain those customers is by consistently having a good experience on the delivery side.
How much are people willing to pay for delivery?
It ranges based on markets. One of the nice things about smaller and medium-sized markets is you do get a larger appetite for paying for delivery fees.
See what he did there? All right. Because people are that much more willing to.
But it's still, we recently changed in most of the Waiter branded markets our delivery fee from $5 to $4 because it resonates better with the customer. So you see downward pressure in that consumer delivery fee that you have to adapt to on a market-by-market basis.
Are you still, I know you said you were downsizing, closing some markets. Are you still adding some markets selectively around the country?
It's very selectively. Okay. One of the things when a space becomes highly competitive like this is you really have to leverage your brand and geographic proximity when you expand markets. So as you grow, you need to be very careful not to jump geographies and be overexposed to competitive pressure in that area and grow very organically almost from a geographic standpoint.
How often do you order in?
I order in several times a week.
Yeah. What about you, Paul?
Rarely.
Yeah, do you go pick it up or you cook?
Yeah, or just bring it home. Yeah.
Why are you driving?
I know, it's a good question.
No, but I also love the idea that it's people like to value their time could also be translated into people are lazy. They don't want to get off the couch. But actually, it is true, especially if you have a family or something like that.
Yeah, and that's what's beautiful about the small, medium-sized markets is it's a much higher concentration of families. So you end up, time is our only finite resource. So if anything, that should be the most valuable item that we have in our day-to-day lives.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adam Price is Chief Executive Officer of Waiter Holdings, which is based in Louisiana, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. It's almost lunchtime.
Yep,
exactly, sort of, right. I guess, maybe, somewhere. Right now, let's head to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, former Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch is describing her long career in the U.S. Foreign Service, a career interrupted when President Trump had her recalled from her post in Ukraine. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman is covering the second round of public impeachment hearings before the House Intelligence Committee. Irv joins us live from Capitol Hill.
Nathan, the lawyer for the Democratic members, Daniel Goldman, asked Yovanovitch her reaction when she learned that the president referred to her in a phone call with Ukraine's new president as bad news.
I was shocked and devastated that I would feature in a phone call between two heads of state in such a manner. It was a terrible moment.
Was the allegation that you were bad-mouthing President Trump true?
No.
Yovanovitch was equally distressed when the president praised the Ukrainian prosecutor in that phone call, who was seen by the embassy as ineffectual or corrupt. Nathan?
As Bloomberg's Irv Chapman following the House Intelligence Committee hearings, and ahead of it, President Trump released a summary transcript of his first phone call with then Ukrainian President-elect Volodymyr Zelensky. It was made 3 months before the phone call at the center of the impeachment inquiry. It's the latest White House effort to blunt Democrats' contention that the president abused his office. Now, this afternoon, President Trump speaks about honesty and transparency in health care prices. This is the Trump administration issues new rules aimed at requiring hospitals and insurers to give more information up front about the cost of procedures. Those remarks are set for 2 p.m. Wall Street time. We will bring them to you live here on Bloomberg Radio. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/award.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, Every journey matters.
This Black Friday, get Sky Entertainment for £22 a month, then feel it all with a spectacular 50% off Sky Sports, including the Manchester Derby and the darts. Build your perfect bundle today. Choose any or all of our Sky TV packages and get an incredible 50% off. Hurry, join today. Visit sky.com. Offer ends 2nd of December. New 18-month minimum terms or 31 days notice to cancel depending on package. Discount on standard pricing with same minimum terms. Set up £25. Kit loan at no cost.
It's one small step for man, one giant shop. Sorry, 2 giant shops a month at 10% off with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and double data from Tesco Mobile, all for $7.99 every month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only, club card app required, exclusions apply, double data only on pay monthly, home from home destinations. First payment payable up front, subject to status, see online for details.
No one wants to wait and wait and wait for that perfect phone. Thankfully, the Tesco Mobile Black Friday event has started already. You can find loads of brilliant phone and SIM deals with low monthly prices and big savings, including time-limited weekly deals. Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event is on. Go in-store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products and length of promotional period. See tescomobile.com/terms.
This is the Survivalist Network. I told you it was coming. London is now in the full throes of a zombie outbreak. If you do not have an impregnable vehicle, you can still access a Toyota Hilux Invincible. Pre-contagion, it was £199 per month with 0% APR representative. For the good of future generations, friends at your local Toyota Hilux Centre are maintaining that deal. Heed, hurry, haul. You'll be fine.
0% APR representative on new sales of Hilux Invincible over 42 months. £199 per month. Customer deposit of £9,701 when financed through Access Toyota by 16th of December 2019. £12,525 optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the Van Fleet for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
Hey, NFL fans, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can hear every NFL game live as it's happening, or catch it later on demand, anytime, anywhere, all season long.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update. Nick Jonas tells Insider.com that his wife Priyanka Chopra is his best teammate. Nick says, our schedule this early on in our marriage was kind of unexpected, but she's the best teammate in all that. Meanwhile, Selena Gomez tells USA Today that her new music is going to be different than her past efforts. Selena says, I definitely explored more with electric guitar, a lot of more soulful tracks, underneath things, acoustic guitar. For more music from Selena Gomez and Nick Jonas, search today's hits on TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks climbed to fresh records led by gains in tech stocks as upbeat comments related to the U.S.-China trade talks and some solid earnings brighten sentiment. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes of the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.4% up 12, Dow's up 0.4% up 115, and the Nasdaq's up 0.5% up 42. The 10-year is little change with a yield of 1.82%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 0.6% at $57.12 a barrel, and COMEX gold's down 0.3% at $14.69.10 per ounce. The dollar yen is at 108.73. The euro at $1.10.53, and the British pound at $1.29.01. It's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
So we got retail sales out this morning, and they did gain, but they were a little bit more muted in certain areas that gave certain economists concern that perhaps the consumer, the stalwart of the economic expansion, was running out of steam. Joining us now, Mark Vittner, senior economist at Wells Fargo Securities. And Mark, I really do want to hone in here on the consumer, since it has been so pivotal in driving growth here in the United States. Do you view the retail sales that we got out this morning as potentially a warning sign?
I don't know that it's that much of a warning. We're coming off a lot of strength in the third quarter, and there was some supply disruption in the auto sector, and I think that may have weakened what would have been an even stronger auto sales. So, I think that the consumer seems to be in reasonably good shape. While job growth is slow, the unemployment rate is very, very low. There's no sign that layoffs are picking up, so folks aren't concerned about their job security. And wages and salaries are accelerating. So I actually think there's too much pessimism about the consumer. And if we had numbers just like this every month, month after month, we would still be better off than what most folks have forecast for the next year.
So, Mark, how concerned are you about the manufacturing sector, business investment, continued weakness there? Yes, that's a smaller part of the U.S. economy relative to the consumer, but how do you kind of view that mosaic?
Well, manufacturing is a smaller part of the economy, but it still accounts for most of the swing. When we went from 2% growth to 3% growth, two-thirds of the acceleration came from manufacturing. And the move from 3% back to 2/3 of the deceleration has been because of a slowdown in the factory sector. Part of that is due to the ongoing uncertainty about where we're headed with trade negotiations with China. If we get a trade deal with China, manufacturing activity will probably pick up. Investment will probably pick up 6 months out. The other thing that's been happening is that when the economy was growing 2%, you needed less inventory than when we were growing 3%. And now that we're back at 2%, businesses have been reducing inventories, and that's weighed on manufacturers. That pull to manufacturing activities from inventory destocking is now probably behind us. So I think in the very near term, we're going to see some better numbers on industrial production and better numbers in the ISM manufacturing survey.
The estimate for year-over-year GDP growth in the United States right now, 1.8% for 2020. How close are we to stall speed here?
Well, 1.8% is about what we've averaged, from 2010 to 2016. I guess if you look over the entire business cycle, we're right at 2.3% since the recession ended. So it's a little bit slower than where we've been. But if we grow 1.8% per year, that's probably enough to keep the unemployment rate steady. And we're at 3.6%. So that's not horrible. I would rather see growth somewhere north of 2%. I think the greater risk is that when growth slows, we're more vulnerable to some sort of exogenous shock. If something bad were to happen somewhere in the world, maybe if China took a harder line on Hong Kong, that might tip the balance into recession.
Wait, walk through that a little bit, because we have been seeing these headlines about how things have been accelerating and tensions have been rising increasingly in Hong Kong with the death of a student. How does that end up being the exogenous factor that disrupts the global economy more significantly?
Well, you never really know what the exogenous factor is until it happens. That's why they're called black swans. But my sense is if China did have to come in harshly, then the response from the West would probably be trade sanctions and economic sanctions on China, which would be far worse than the trade war. And we saw how much the trade war slowed global economy. So if sanctions would have to be put in place on businesses doing business in China, then that would be a whole other ball game, which I think would really slow the global economy. But there really wouldn't be any choice in the matter. It'd be similar to what we saw in Russia after Crimea. So it would be similar circumstance to that.
So, Mark, do you think the Federal Reserve is taking the right tack here after that last rate cut to just say maybe a little bit of a pause here, and we will take a look at the data as it comes in?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, and I don't want to. Let me just say one last thing on China. That's certainly not something that we're looking for. I think that I really doubt that we would ever see a scenario like that. But I think that the Fed is holding off to see, are we going to get a trade deal? And if we get a trade deal, does it cause the economy to reaccelerate. And if it does, then they're probably done. But I think a lot of folks think, hey, if we get a trade deal, the Fed's done. I don't think it's that simple. I think we got to get a trade deal, and then we have to see if that trade deal actually impacts the economy in a meaningful way. And if it does, then they probably are done. But right now, we still have another cut on the funds rate in March. We have another quarter-point cut in March. But they're clearly in a wait-and-see mode right now until we get to March.
Do you think if we don't get a trade deal, that the 1.8% prediction for 2020 growth seems right, or do you think it would be substantially lower?
Well, when we came up with our forecast of 1.8% growth, we were assuming no trade deal or a minimal trade deal, and so it's really hard to say. But I would say that the downside risk to the economy would certainly increase if we don't get a trade deal, because it's not just the immediate effects on the U.S. economy. It really works through the dampening effects, the further dampening effects on global economic growth, and how that comes back to impact the U.S. Because the U.S. really is not we don't have much of our economy tied to the global economy, certainly not as much as other industrialized nations do.
So jobs has been a big part of supporting this consumer. We've had to kind of slow down. Are you concerned about jobs?
I'm not as concerned about the slowdown in jobs, and actually the slowdown is greater than what the reported data indicate, because in August we got the quarterly census of employment and wage data, which showed that job growth from March of 18 to March of 19, which is the source of the revisions that we get early next year, was 500,000 jobs less than was previously reported. Most of that downward revision is in retail trade because of the loss of jobs to online retailing, in the leisure and hospitality sector because of rising wages.
Got it.
Total income earned from those jobs is actually stronger than had been previously reported. So that more than offsets the fact that job growth is slowed.
Mark Wittner, thank you so much for joining us. Mark Wittner, senior economist at Wells Fargo Securities. Right now, let's go down to our Washington, D.C. studio, Nathan Hager, for an update on the impeachment hearings.
Former Ukraine Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, Paul, is testifying before the House Intelligence Committee about a Ukraine policy she says is in disarray.
At the closed deposition, I expressed grave concerns about the degradation of the Foreign Service over the past few years and the failure of State Department leadership to push back as foreign and corrupt interests apparently hijacked our Ukraine policy.
Yovanovitch says she was the victim of a smear campaign led by President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. In her opening statement, she rebutted accusations made by Giuliani and others, saying she never told anyone in the embassy or in the Ukraine government to ignore President Trump's orders because she thought that he was going to be impeached. She also says she never worked with the Obama administration to help the Clinton campaign or hurt the Trump campaign. President Trump is already reacting to Yovanovitch's testimony on Twitter, writing, quote, "Everywhere Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad." He says that Ukraine President Zelensky spoke unfavorably of her in their July 25th phone call, and Yovanovitch is talking about how she felt after hearing how the two leaders spoke about her in the call.
She's going to go through some things. It didn't sound good. It sounded like a threat.
President Trump says it is his absolute right to appoint ambassadors. We're going to have a live report from Capitol Hill in 15 minutes. Bloomberg Terminal customers can watch the impeachment hearing on Live Go. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole in one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Some people find love par chance. Me, I found love in my Citroën dealership. I looked at new Citroën C5 Aircross SUV with advanced comfort seats, and boom! They say, Emmanuel, you also get 0% finance over 48 months. I say, I love it. Visit your local Citroën dealership and find love too. New Citroën C5 Aircross SUV, the most comfortable SUV.
Citroën. Citroën UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. Conditional sale. Terms, eligibility criteria and return conditions apply. A guarantee may be required. PSA Finance UK Limited.
There's It's a Friday Afternoon happy. Listening to Headbangers happy. There's no traffic on the M25 happy. The lads won at footy this weekend happy. There's only 40 days until Christmas happy. It's almost home time happy. Getting 10% off your new Michelin tyres along with a free coffee happy. You get that kind of happy from QuickFit in London. Book online now at quickfit.com and drive away happy. Terms and conditions apply.
It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update. Nick Jonas tells Insider.com that his wife Priyanka Chopra is his best teammate. Nick says, our schedule this early on in our marriage was kind of unexpected, but she's the best teammate in all that. Meanwhile, Selena Gomez tells USA Today that her new music is going to be different than her past efforts. Selena says, I definitely explored more with electric guitar, a lot of more soulful tracks, underneath things, acoustic guitar. For more music from Selena Gomez and Nick Jonas, search today's hits on TuneIn.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we'll dig into the state of the consumer with the U.S. economy getting a couple more readings today. Plus, we'll take a look at the 13F filings. What are hedge funds holdings? What are they selling? Right now, let's head over to our own Greg Jarrett, Group Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Stocks are up, Lisa. This comes after an American official hinted the U.S. and China are close to locking down a partial trade deal. The dollar is down. Steve Blitz, TS Lombard, tells Bloomberg he does think there will be a U.S.-China trade deal at least by year-end.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think they'd like to get it done before the year. I think that Trump would needs it. I think the economy needs it. I think that this idea that it can wait all the way to the convention next year or just before the election, that kind of narrative is really a false narrative.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500's up 0.5%, up 15. The Dow's up 0.5%, up 134. And the Nasdaq's up 0.6%, up 50. The 10-year's down 1/32. The yield 1.82%. West Texas Intermediate crude's up 0.9% at 57.28 a barrel, while COMEX gold's down 0.3% at 14.6830 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 108.75. The euro $1.1053, and the British pound $1.2906. Beyond Meat shares briefly gave up early gains before edging back into positive territory after a William Blair analyst indicated he expects the company's test program with McDonald's in Canada to expand into a larger test and could eventually lead to a phased rollout across the fast food chain globally. Beyond Meat is up 0.8%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. We continue with Bloomberg Markets. Lisa and Paul.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial service investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. We have a green on the screen here. Positive trade rhetoric coming out of Washington. Let's see where the action is with small cap stocks. We welcome Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at?
Not so much green there, Paul, though there is some. I mean, the Russell 2000 index is up 0.25%, and the S&P 500 is up 0.5%. So not quite keeping pace, those smaller companies. That said, one of the Russell's biggest gains belongs to Enlight, whose ticker is LASR. The maker of industrial lasers has climbed 14.5% after disclosing the purchase of closely held Neutronics. The cash and stock deal was valued at $33 million. Centric Brands, ticker CTRC, has risen about 12%. The apparel maker reached a multi-year licensing agreement with Sequential Brands Group to produce singer Jessica Simpson's handbag and jewelry collections. Terms weren't disclosed. And Digi International, ticker DGII, has added 11%. The communications software maker's profit and sales for the fiscal fourth quarter beat analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. The Russell's steepest drop by far belongs to Restore Bio, ticker TORC. The drug developer has plummeted almost 84% after a proposed respiratory treatment failed in a final stage study. And Contura Energy, ticker CTRA, has fallen more than 15%. The coal producer is down for a second day after third quarter results showed an unexpected loss and lower revenue than analysts expected. Yesterday, Contura was down 48.5%.
Yeah, but what's the actual price?
Well, that stock right now, it's at $8.
There you go. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, joining us. Thank you so much for that update. Let's shift gears. U.S. retail sales coming in, rebounding slightly more than estimated in October. However, you could see the gains were in auto and filling stations sectors. You're not seeing the same kind of strength in clothes and furniture. Joining us here is Yelena Shulyatyeva. She is senior U.S. economist with Bloomberg Economics, and I'm trying to understand how negative this is. We just had Mark Wittner from Wells Fargo Securities saying he thinks there's too much gloom and doom around the consumer. Do you agree?
I would say it's adequate but not robust for economic outlook and for consumer spending in particular. I think it's not a strong number at all. Actually, weakness in the discretionary spending categories you mentioned, like electronics and also like sporting goods and restaurant sales, they also declines, which is not a good omen for holiday spending for the holiday shopping season that is coming. So I would say it's not, it doesn't warrant material reassessment, to put it in Federal Reserve officials' terms, but it clearly tells us that there's something going on and consumer momentum is slowing.
Consumer momentum is slowing. The consumer still has a job. Wages are going up, but maybe not as much as they would like. But when I think about the consumer, I think about the jobs picture. And the jobs picture is still pretty decent, is it not?
I would say so, yes. And Chair Powell yesterday characterized it as a historically tight labor market, which I think is a pretty fair assessment. The question is whether it will continue, and a lot actually will depend on trade. Trade will define whether companies feel the need to cut payrolls, right? So if this whole thing falls apart, I think we might see that. Whereas, there's some optimism about phase one trade deal and all of that. Right, that might just put it in a back burner.
Everyone's talking about this, that if we get a trade deal, then that really will unleash a certain confidence among chief executive officers. I'm trying to understand, if we get a deal with respect to soybeans and oil or hogs, how is that going to change the picture that much?
It'll just push the can down the road, but not. This will absolutely, in my mind, not revive.
It won't sort of rewire the whole workings of the current economy. I guess, are we really talking about the U.S. rolling back the tariffs that were supposed to go into effect in December? Is that what people really are talking about when they say a trade truce?
So you mean like they will not impose tariffs that are
going to otherwise go into effect?
Otherwise, it will actually hit the U.S. economy, because the tariffs that were postponed in October and that are planned to be imposed in December, they are bigger as a share of the total overall impact on economic growth than was back in 2018. It will be a significant hit to economic grobgrowth.
Okay, so the consumer's generally in good shape, but bears watching. I guess that's a takeaway. On the manufacturing side, we got some data today, some weak numbers there. Even if, I guess, obviously the GM strike had a lot to do with it, but
I think it was broader, and the numbers are telling us that it was broader than the GM impact. Okay. And even that, you cannot just totally discount it. So I would say we cannot see the full reversal next month just because the strike is over, because, some automakers were working near capacity. So for them to try to catch up on the lost output, it will be very hard. So there was some part of it that was completely lost. So I would say manufacturing is still in contraction. This report affirms that.
It's really interesting. Yelena Yasholyeva, thank you so much for being with us, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. Really important perspective here about what we're talking about when we talk about a trade deal. Yep. What we're talking about essentially in its entirety right now is not having the December tariffs put on into effect, because that would actually affect the U.S. economy more. Correct. And I think that that's the key, and it's sort of the reason why there is optimism right now in markets, perhaps, is that the traders are betting that President Trump doesn't want to end up with that on the books. Like, he doesn't want that hit ahead of the 2020 elections. And it's sort of this game theory, right? Will he be able to not lose face, come to some sort of truce, roll back those tariffs, and be able to keep on going? That's the key tension right now.
We've got 1 month until those tariffs. So it's interesting. We're really getting down to the end of the game here, and we'll have to see if anything can get done on paper. We get all this rhetoric coming out of Washington from various people. We had Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross this morning on air making similar comments to the economic advisor Larry Kudlow made last night, that both sides are getting closer to a deal. That seems to be enough for investors at this point in time. But again, we only have 1 month until those tariffs go on. And so, again, a big issue for the markets. We have to get something done. So says Wall Street. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
All right, thanks, Paul. The House Intelligence Committee has recessed its hearing with former Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch so members can cast votes. Soon, the Republicans will get their turn to question the former Ukraine envoy. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has the latest on this second round of public impeachment hearings from Capitol Hill. Irv.
Nathan, when President Trump asked the new Ukrainian president to do him a favor, namely launch investigations into the Bidens and into purported Ukrainian election interference, Yovanovitch said the Ukrainian government scrambled to respond.
The U.S. relationship for Ukraine is the single most important relationship. President Zelensky, any president, would do what they could to lean in on a favor request and see what they could do. One of the most important functions that individual has is to make sure the relationship with the U.S. is rock solid.
But U.S. diplomats, as well as his advisors, were cautioning Zelensky not to get embroiled in American politics because Ukraine needs the long-term support of both U.S. political parties. Nathan?
Our Bloomberg's Irv Chapman with us from Capitol Hill. Meantime, President Trump plans to attend a meeting of NATO leaders next month in London, where he will try once again to convince allies to increase defense spending. The White House says the visit will take place December 2nd to the 4th, I should say. It will also include a reception hosted by Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace. Investigators in Southern California are trying to determine what would drive a 16-year-old to pull a gun out of his backpack on his birthday and apparently open fire at random before turning the gun on himself. The attack yesterday at Saugus High in Santa Clarita left 2 dead. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
In a perfect world, you'd be listening at exactly the same moment the most important things are said.
Negotiations over a trade deal are advancing.
Instead, we designed the perfect show.
They discussed risks and the transition to renewable energy.
June Grasso and Ed Baxter.
The conversation continues with a focus on trade.
Bloomberg Best, weekday evenings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
The happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Next. Nah. Nope. Boring. If you skip through loads of your TV channels, why are you paying loads of money for them? With TalkTalk TV and Faster Fibre, you can access the nation's favourite TV shows, a world of films and sport, live and on demand, all for £25.95 a month for 18 months. And if you're quick, you'll even get a year of Amazon Prime on us. Search TalkTalk TV. TalkTalk. For everyone. Offer ends 5th of December, subject to availability. T's and C's apply.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Witch Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition.
For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked bread to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
With the new Halifax Family Boost mortgage, children can get help to buy their first home, and mum and dad earn interest on their savings. Everyone's a winner. The new Halifax Family Boost mortgage. Halifax makes it happen.
Your home and savings could be at risk if mortgage repayments are not maintained. Only available in England and Wales. One applicant must hold a Halifax Reward or Ultimate Reward current account. Conditions and exclusions apply. O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and come to the shops with me. We can get 10% off 2 big shops a month with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and 10% off your favourite Tesco brands, including F&F in-store every day. All for $7.99 a month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop. In-store spend only. Club Card app required. Exclusions apply. See online for details.
This is the sound of festive fun in London. You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard. Somebody stays on his feet and scores. Touchdown.
The top of the Big 12 is at stake. Reigning champion Oklahoma travels to Waco, Texas to take on the surprising undefeated Baylor Bears. The action kicks off this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks moved to session highs and more records after, you guessed it, an administration comment that trade talks with China are going very well. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.5%, up 17. The Dow's up 0.5%, up 143, and the Nasdaq's up 0.6%, up 53. The 10-year's down 2/32. The yield 1.82%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 0.9% at $57.27 a barrel, with COMEX gold down 0.4% at $14.66.90 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 108.81. The euro $1.10.48, and the British pound $1.29 even. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Now on Bloomberg Markets, Munis in Focus with Joe Mysak.
This Focus on Munis is brought to you by Build America Mutual. BAM Green Star Bonds finance projects that protect and restore the environment with more renewable energy and efficient transportation and buildings. Visit buildamerica.com/Greenstar. BAM, Building America. Joe Mysak covers all things municipals for Bloomberg Briefs. He joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Joe, we spent, Lisa and I, a couple hours at BAM earlier this week. Had a lot of fun there for those good folks. Let's talk about California first. PG&E. This is something we're starting to see some calls for maybe a takeover of PG&E. Give us the update.
Oh, yeah. State takeover. Romy Varghese, our reporter in California, wrote a couple of stories this week about this. And it's, people are tired of blackouts, and they're tired of high prices, and they're tired of wildfires. And they think the way to get around this is going to be have Governor Newsom champion a move to take the thing over and turn it into a cooperative or turn it into a large municipal utility and make it much more answerable to the public.
Well, that just basically increased the taxpayer dollars that go to it in order to save the extra dollars for the individuals. Will it actually mean less blackouts? I mean, is there any study showing that state ownership and control would actually make it a better utility?
Well, no, of course not. I think right now what you're seeing is sort of populist, if you will, backlash to how badly the utility has managed itself over the last couple of years. Now, some of the things are unavoidable, perhaps because of climate change, because of droughts. But the population is very dissatisfied. So we're seeing, a real. This is how these things occur. They just keep, going, and the population gets upset, and see ya.
I will just say, from a market perspective, Paul, PG&E has been a massive story among a number of hedge funds in particular that were heavily invested in the bonds and that came in to buy the bonds when it seemed like there was going to be some sort of bankruptcy plan, and then got burned yet again when the bonds tumbled yet again because of additional wildfires and potential liabilities there. So it's a massive market story. Yep. This BBB rated utility that was downgraded to junk, defaulted all in a swoop, and then has all of the bankruptcy proceedings amid wildfires and damages.
So, Joe, is there any precedent for this happening in other states taking over utilities like this? Certainly there's one as large as PG&E. I
can't think of any, but that's a very good question. It's one of those things where people are not inclined to let PG&E off the hook in any way, meaning that inverse condemnation where the utility has to pick up the cost if their equipment is involved, or even if the equipment is not at fault. There is this mindset to penalize PG&E.
So broadening out here beyond the PG&E story, which certainly has been dominant, we are getting to the end of the year where people start predicting what is to come. Yesterday, when we were at Build America Mutual, there was a feeling that the acceleration in both inflows into mutual funds as well as the issuance would continue to be elevated throughout 2020. Where do you expect to see the greatest amount of activity, both on the issuance side as well as investor interest?
Oh, baby. Next year is going to, I have seen the predictions for volume all over the place, but north of 400 billion, which, we've only seen, I think, 3 times over the last decade. So next year, I had dinner with a banker last week who said that he had seen enough deals in the pipeline where he thought we could easily see north of 450 billion. So we're, big volume next year. Where? Well, of course, the usual top states are going to be the issuers, but there's going to be a lot of, there seems to be pent-up demand for infrastructure finance, taking over, and as it has, for any federal government action on this. We obviously don't see anything on that front. So the municipalities are just taking it in their own hands. Yeah. Certainly a lot of airport financing.
Yeah, we all are waiting when we don't have to take a bus to another bus to a taxi to get out of LaGuardia Airport. Thank you so much, Joe Mysak, a municipal bond editor for both the Bloomberg Briefs as well as Bloomberg News. Right now, let's get an impeachment update with Nathan Hager in our 99.1 studios. Nathan.
And Lisa, the lone witness today, former Ukraine ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, who tells the House Intelligence Committee she was the victim of a smear campaign led by President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, a campaign she says is undermining official Ukraine policy.
I do not understand Mr. Giuliani's motives for attacking me, nor can I offer an opinion on whether he believed the allegations he spread about me.
But Yovanovitch says the effort gave, quote, shady interests the world over, a lesson in how to get rid of a diplomat who doesn't give them what they want. As her testimony began, President Trump tweeted, quote, everywhere that Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad, end quote. The former ambassador was asked how she felt when the president released the rough transcript of his July 25th phone call with Ukraine's president and found that they told each other that she was going to go through some things.
Shocked, appalled, devastated that the president of the United States would talk about any ambassador like that to a foreign head of state. And it was me. I couldn't believe it.
Republicans get their turn to question Yovanovitch shortly. We'll have a live report in 15 minutes. Bloomberg terminal customers can watch at Live Go. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are on the rise. This could mean 6 consecutive winning weeks if equities stay in the green through the session. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said negotiations for an interim trade deal with China are down to the final stages. Retail sales rose more than estimated in October. Gains from auto dealers and gas stations helped. The value of overall sales rose 0.3%. Farm finances deteriorated across many agricultural states during the summer and early fall, despite the Trump administration's second round of trade aid payments and slightly higher prices. That's according to the Kansas City Fed. And Dollar Tree is in hot water with federal regulators. The FDA has sent the company a warning letter about drugs produced by foreign manufacturers for its Assured brand label. The agency said the drugs were made in substandard conditions and have been barred from entry to the U.S. Dollar Tree says it's cooperating with the FDA. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but Miss Araceli, she gave me direction.
At age 47, Marco finished his high school diploma.
50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Next. Nah. Nope. Boring. If you skip through loads of your TV channels, why are you paying loads of money for them? With TalkTalk TV and Faster Fibre, you can access the nation's favourite TV shows, a world of films and sport, live and on demand, all for £25.95 a month for 18 months. And if you're quick, you'll even get a year of Amazon Prime on us. Search TalkTalk TV. TalkTalk. For everyone. Offer ends 5th of December, subject to availability. T's and C's apply.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
London, there's nothing like coming back to a warm home after a long day at work. Especially when you've been stuck at a cold train station in rush hour for what seems like an eternity. Luckily, with Hive Active Heating, rated 5-star on Trustpilot, you can turn your heating on from wherever you are. And now with our new Hive radiator valves, you can even control your heating room by room. Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
With the new Halifax Family Boost mortgage, children can get help to buy their first home, and mum and dad earn interest on their savings. Everyone's a winner. The new Halifax Family Boost mortgage. Halifax makes it happen.
Your home and savings could be at risk if mortgage repayments are not maintained. Only available in England and Wales. One applicant must hold a Halifax Reward or Ultimate Reward current account. Conditions and exclusions apply.
This is the Survivalist Network. I told you it was coming. London is now in the full throes of a zombie outbreak. If you do not have an impregnable vehicle, you can still access a Toyota Hilux Invincible. Pre-contagion, it was £199 per month with 0% APR representative. For the good of future generations, friends at your local Toyota Hilux Centre are maintaining that deal. Heed, hurry, haul. You'll be fine.
0% APR representative on new sales of Hilux Invincible over 42 months. £199 per month. Customer deposit of £9,701 when financed through Access Toyota by 16th December 2019. £12,525 optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run. Feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
Far wing elevates. Triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to speak with our good friend David Kotak, Cumberland Advisors Chief Investment Officer, get his thoughts on the equity markets as indices continue to make all-time highs. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Stocks are moving even further into record territory right now, Paul. This after an American official, Larry Kudlow, hinted that the U.S. and China are close to locking down a partial trade deal. The is down. Libby Cantrell, PIMCO head of public policy, tells Bloomberg investors need to be careful when they're trying to call a China trade deal.
I think, folks are probably justifiably more cautiously optimistic on this phase just because it's a much skinnier kind of deal. But I do think that it behooves folks just to remember these previous experiences and nothing's certain until there's a real papering of the deal, and we just haven't seen that yet.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 0.6%, now up 18. The Dow's also up 0.6%, up 166, and the NASDAQ is up 0.7%, up 56. The 10-year is down 3/32, the yield 1.82%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 1.7% at 57.74 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.5% at 14.6640 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.85, the euro $1.1047, and the British pound $1.29 even. Sources say Credit Suisse expects to cut bonuses at its investment banking and capital markets division and reallocate capital to higher growth areas after a slowdown in deal making. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by the New York Community Trust, a public charity working with generous New Yorkers to make an impact on the issues they care about. To set up your fund through the New York Community Trust, visit nycommunitytrust.org. Hopium is the word of the week, at least hopium that there will be some sort of deal, despite the fact that we have no concrete evidence. We've seen this before. We're really getting close, but we have nothing again and again and again. Joining us now to talk about whether the hopium is real in terms of market reaction and how it should persist heading into 2020 is David Kotak, Cumberland Advisors Chief Investment Officer. David, I know that you've been bullish on equities. Do you continue to be even after the recent higher and the recent new all-time highs that we've seen?
At the moment, I am getting very nervous. We entered the market, went to fully invested structure, Lisa, the last week in August.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we have been there since then. And at this level of markets and with the current news flow, I'm very, very concerned. The market is discounting all the positive outcomes, and it's being fueled by a very expansive Federal Reserve policy, which is creating huge liquidity that doesn't last forever. So the answer is, am I concerned and worried? Absolutely yes. And would I be making changes? They could come at any time.
So the changes, David, this is interesting because I think obviously over the last several times we've had you on, you've been very correctly in the bullish camp. So this is, from our perspective, a little bit of a turn for you. How would you proceed if you were to continue to be cautious? What kind of changes would you make?
I would raise cash, lower equity exposure. I might consider switching to more defensive, less aggressive sectors. Our quantitative work has been guiding us because it's capturing these changes in market sentiment. And the market sentiment has become extended. A variety of ways to estimate that. We never know for sure. But we're seeing it, and our view is the market is reflecting changes in headlines which are affecting sentiment. Fear of wealth taxes, the Warren-Sanders approach, seems to be subsiding as the politics change. Whether impeachment would be conviction in the Senate seems to be subsiding. The House is, it may be an assumption, but the political risk is now the Clinton impeachment model, not the Nixon impeachment attempt model. So markets are making adjustments, and I think part of that is due to an assumption. The assumption is there'll be some form of truce trade, reduction of tension, And that's necessary for economics to start to improve. The economic landscape is terrible because we see manufacturing sector shrinkage, and all the news flow that you report every day is sending that kind of a message. So to us, it says, okay, we had a big pendulum swing. We're at all-time new highs. And I never saw a client complain when you took a profit and put it in the bank.
All right, so where would you take profits here?
Well, I would cut back on the high beta sectors, which have really, really raced ahead.
So you cut back on Apple and Microsoft tech, big tech.
Yeah. The big names, the tech sector among them. The defense has had a terrific run. Maybe it'll have more. This has to now become an ETF by ETF, sector by sector, industry by industry decision. But for the run from August, the wind has been at our back because we were in cash in our quantitative models from the end of February to August. And we have had a terrific year by having cash during a period of time of high volatility and uncertainty in the way we measure it. And then we had the triggers, so we went in August. It's been a remarkable year. And at this juncture, you have to ask yourself, how much more can you expect? I'm above my targets for year end on the S&P. It was a 3,000 target. You may recall we've discussed it on the show. Over the years. Well, we're above it. And we look like we have stability now in the monetary area, at least it appears. So you can't expect much improvement beyond that. And we are seeing little uptick signs in inflation and uptick signs in some of the bond interest rates. And what that suggests is the wind has been at our back, but maybe it's now subsiding.
Hey, David, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your color as always, and clearly we sensed a little bit of change in tone from you, so we appreciate you sharing that with us. David Kotak, Cumberland Advisors Chief Investment Officer. So that was news for me, Lisa, because David's been consistently, I think, constructive on the market, bullish.
Since August.
And now he's saying, he's had a nice run here, as obviously has the market has, and it's not the worst thing to perhaps take a little bit of money off the table, maybe get a little bit defensive. We've heard that from some people as well. Others are still saying, hey, we've got more to run in this market, but a grizzled veteran like David Kotak saying, let's get a little bit cautious. Very interesting change in tone for him. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, public impeachment hearings against President Trump remain in focus. Right now, the House is taking up an export finance bill and voting on a series of amendments. So the Intelligence Committee hearing is in recess. That's after Democrats had the first round of questions for former Ukraine Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman joins us live from Capitol Hill with the very latest. Irv.
Nathan, as she testified, President Trump tweeted his criticism that everything turned bad in the countries where she served for 3 decades. Chairman Adam Schiff asked Yovanovitch her reaction.
There are huge challenges, including corruption. But they've made a lot of progress, including in the years that I was there. The Ukrainian people get the most credit for that. But a part of that credit goes to the work of the United States and to me as the ambassador.
Yovanovitch agreed with Schiff that the president's attack could be taken as a threat, intimidating to other public servants who want to give testimony. Nathan?
And Irv, we're getting some reaction from House Republicans. The number 3 GOP member in the House, Liz Cheney of Wyoming, says President Trump, quote, was wrong, end quote, to post those tweets critical of Yovanovitch. Cheney says Yovanovitch clearly is somebody who's been a public servant for decades. She says she doesn't think the president should have done that. Now, this afternoon, the president delivers remarks on honesty and transparency in health care prices. This as the administration issues new rules aimed at requiring hospitals and insurers to give more upfront information about the costs of procedures, including the discounted rates they negotiate with insurers. President speaks around 2 p.m. Wall Street time. You'll hear it live here on Bloomberg Radio. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobily impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Are you wiper blades on such a wet Friday afternoon as this? Squeaky, streaky. Rain rattles your windscreen, smears rattle your confidence. Can't see, can't drive. Can't believe you haven't been to Halfords yet. Come to Halfords. We fit new wiper blades on the spot from just £3. And we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Wandsworth. Ready for winter's worst? Ready for anything. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Wiper blades sold separately. Selected vehicles only in most stores.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Coffee shop, cashback, cat flaps, cashback, beanbags, rucksack, hire car, buy a car, flapjack, cashback, dumbbells, cashback, takeaway, holiday to anywhere the sun is at, bum bag, laptop, big match, hatchback, binge watching, paintballing, crab fishing, cashback, anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go. Guess what? Cashback. Whatever you spend your money on, get money back every time with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
It's one small step for man, one giant shop. Sorry, 2 giant shops a month at 10% off with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and double data from Tesco Mobile. All for $7.99 every month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only, club card app required, exclusions apply, double data only on pay monthly, home from home destinations. First payment payable up front, subject to status, see online for details.
No! The next bus is 18 minutes away. Look, there's a cab. We really shouldn't. Taxi! I mean, we ate out last night. Just get in, we're getting soaked. You're such a bad influence.
You can't always control what you spend, but you can save as you spend with Save the Change. When you use your Lloyds Bank debit card, we'll round up the amount to the next pound and transfer the difference to your nominated Lloyds Bank savings account. Feel in control every day with our mobile banking app. Lloyds Bank, by your side. T's and C's apply.
You're stuck indoors, waiting for a delivery.
But you should be at the match with your mates. Get in!
You want to be home when the kids get back from school.
Hey, guys.
But you've got to work late. Again.
With Ring Video Doorbell, you can do both. Featuring HD video and two-way talk, you can see, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are, all on your phone. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the Van Fleet for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
On the goal line, scores and takes it home.
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, face off.
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Off session highs, but still in record territory. The S&P 500 heads for another record and its sixth weekly gain in a row, the longest streak in 2 years. All of this comes after White House Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow says negotiations between the U.S. and China are coming down to the final stages. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 0.5% up 16. The Dow's up 0.5% up 136, and the Nasdaq's up 0.6% up 50. The 10-year's down 4/30 seconds with a yield of 1.83%. West Texas Intermediate crude is surged. It's now up 1.6% at $57.70 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.5% at $14.65.50 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.83. The euro $1.10.44, and the British pound $1.28.98. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
WeWork's back in the news. Coming across the Bloomberg terminal right now, WeWork's is said to face SEC inquiry into possible rule breaches. So we want to dig into that. Matt Robinson, Bloomberg News, joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. Also a headline out there, Roger Stone is guilty in U.S. trial over lies about the 2016 leak. So the headlines continue to break. But going back to WeWork, so what's going on here? What do you think the SEC is really looking at here?
So when the SEC opens investigation, they're looking to see whether what was disclosed to investors was reflected in, private discussions, what was going on in the company. So they're always looking for, if you're saying something publicly, that it matches what you're saying privately. And given the sort of fall from grace from WeWork over the last couple of months, certainly, sort of unsurprising for securities lawyers to be like, they're going to make sure that they're kicking the tires and that everything that was, going on in the company was known to potential investors.
So there have been other reports that the SEC was in close contact with WeWork leading up to the IPO, saying your documents are insufficient. The whole community adjusted EBITDA that they changed to something else was problematic. You guys need to account for your finances in a better way. How instrumental will that be in this investigation, if at all?
Well, for something like this, another thing to point out is that often with these kinds of investigations, they last years. The average investigation is like 2 to 3 years for the SEC, and they're sort of wrapping their arms around what was disclosed. I mean, there's a lot. The company had a prospectus out for bonds. There's a lot of information to sort of dive into to make sure that investors were properly informed of their business.
So the deal never happened. Okay, but still the SEC can cite them for some issues as it relates to just its registration statement and things like that?
Right. So anytime you're raising money for a venture, that's a security. I mean, that's a very general way to sort of talk about it. But, venture capital. If you're raising money for a venture and you're lying to sophisticated investors, that's, the SEC has brought cases in recent years, given how much that market has been growing.
What's the potential penalty for WeWork?
It's hard to say. I mean, this is something that's just getting started. Most of the time, the SEC is a civil regulator. They can't. They look at its penalties, or hey, we want you to improve this disclosure. So it's very hard to say at this point, though.
So can the SEC, like, one of the things about WeWork when it did file its S1, there's a lot of governance issues there, about corporate jets and leasing back space and so on and so forth. Are those some of the things, now that those are disclosed, now, are those some of the things that the SEC might look at and say, was it full disclosure, or did you need to do more?
Right. Those are good questions that the SEC is going to be asking, because, those are sort of legal lawyer to lawyer questions. How do you define material? Was this, explicit enough? But the SEC, has in the past, they look at those kinds of transactions. Is this really a true arm's length transaction? Is this, separate from, would you have given this deal or proposed deal to anyone else that, you didn't have a relationship with?
Looking right now at WeWork bonds, they are implying a yield of 15% or nearly 15%, 74, a little bit less than 75 cents on the dollar. These are bonds maturing in 2025, not long-term debt.
Yield. They were trading it back in August, I believe.
Yes, It is absolutely. Actually, they were trading back in September. They were trading at a 7.2% yield. So yes, more than double. And I'm just looking right now, and it raises questions about the financial feasibility of this company going forward. And I'm thinking, Matt, as you talk, a 2 to 3 year investigation by the SEC. Is WeWork going to be around in 2 to 3 years to account for whatever malfeasance, if there is any, found?
Yes. I mean, even if that scenario were to happen, you're still obligated to deal with securities laws. So I mean, for them, they're going to want to just be like, hey, here was our full disclosure in raising cash.
Is there any fallout for the investment banks and the law firms that advise WeWork on this underwriting process? Does it typically spill over to them?
Generally, I mean, it depends on what the government's looking at. If the story is that this was a company that everyone was expecting great growth, and it was people really thought this was the value of the company, then it's hard to say there was some misrepresentation, right? There's people believed in this story at the time, but if in turn it's like, well, actually they were not being as explicit about their business, then and then who knew about that those are the kinds of things that the government wants to sort of investigate.
Thank you so much for being with us. Really an interesting story, a good scoop. Thank you for joining. Matt Robinson covers all things related to financial regulation and the SEC for us here at Bloomberg. WeWork is said to be facing an SEC inquiry into rule violations potentially over their disclosures being perhaps a little incongruous depending on who they're talking to.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how this will play out, but just one more. The news keeps coming for WeWork. To think about the fall from grace for this company. We started the year to where we are now. It's just extraordinary. And so the question really is, as you raised, I think at some point, I think we may be there right now, is what is the ongoing concern story with WeWork here? As you look at the balance sheet and you look at the cash burn, can they cut costs fast enough to get the profitability? Now, they did bring some of the profit forecasts a little bit forward, but it's really under question.
The news keeps coming also from Washington, D.C. We should just say that Roger Stone, the longtime Republican operative and early Trump booster, was convicted of lying to Congress, obstructing a congressional probe, and witness tampering. This is just 2 days after House Democrats separately began public impeachment hearings, but this just came down as well, and we wanted to bring that to you. In the markets, we are seeing something of a rally, although it's actually extending gains. You've got the NASDAQ up 0.6%, similar with the S&P and the Dow, with optimism that there will be some sort of trade deal. Right now, let's get the latest on the impeachment hearings out of Washington. We've got Nathan Hager there. Nathan.
Yeah, on this second round of public impeachment hearings, Lisa, the House Intelligence Committee has been hearing from former Ukraine Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch. She's been detailing what she calls a smear campaign led by President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, that undermined official policy in Ukraine and ended her career.
As various witnesses have recounted, they shared baseless allegations with the president and convinced him to remove his ambassador, despite the fact that the State Department fully understood that the allegations were false and the sources highly suspect.
Those allegations include that she told embassy staff and Ukraine government officials to ignore President Trump's orders because she thought he'd be impeached, and that she worked with the Obama administration to help the Clinton campaign and hurt the Trump campaign. As this testimony began, President Trump tweeted, quote, "Everywhere that Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad," end quote. House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff called that witness intimidation in real time. For Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin,
President Zelensky, in President Zelensky's own words, said that he believes that Ambassador Yovanovitch was, quote, a bad ambassador. That's what President Zelensky says.
Number 3 House Republican Liz Cheney, though, says it was wrong for the president to tweet that about a career diplomat. The the Republicans are going to have their turn to question Yovanovitch shortly. Bloomberg Terminal customers can watch the hearing at Live Go. This is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. They like.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Edmonton and Tottenham from 10 p.m. on Friday the 15th of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 18th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At Asda this Christmas, treat them to a gift or two, or 3, with 3 for 2 on a wide range of beauty and toiletry gift sets, from Dove, Lynx, Bayliss and Harding and many more. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Individual prices £1 to £20, cheapest item free.
The nights have started to draw in, and at DFS we know that can only mean one thing. Everyone's spending more time at home getting nice and cosy. You can't beat it. That's why our autumn-winter collection sofas are handmade to order for complete comfort, and many are guaranteed to be delivered in time for Christmas. So make sure you come home to a sofa that's perfect for you. DFS.
O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and come to the shops with me. We can get 10% off 2 big shops a month with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and 10% off your favourite Tesco brands, including F&F in-store every day. All for $7.99 a month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only. Club card app required, exclusions apply. See online for details.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide. I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power. This is where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Sean Donnan in Washington on signs that trade deal with China may be coming together finally. On Capitol Hill, Kevin Cirilli on day 2 of public impeachment hearings, and Damian Sassower here in New York on what political unrest is doing to the Hong Kong economy. So, Sean, let's start with you. It's another day, maybe another new hope about a deal. Well, where are we?
Yeah, well, look, we've been existing in a world of new hopes and false dawns for some time now, and we are in another day of new hopes, as you say. We are hearing from senior members of the administration, Larry Kudlow and Wilbur Ross, that we are in the final stages of negotiations for this Phase 1 deal. We also know from Wilbur Ross and from our sources that Ambassador Robert Lighthizer, the U.S. Trade Representative, and Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin are getting on the phone today with Liu He, the top Chinese trade negotiator, to try and iron out some more things. We are in this kind of messy end game. The warning, though, is we've been here before, and we were certainly here in May, and this may still unravel.
Yeah, I feel like we're looking through a glass darkly at the moment, because we just had a couple of days ago a report that, in fact, we hadn't even agreed on soybeans yet. You'd think if they're close to a deal, they would have gotten that one out of the way at least.
Well, I think what we're seeing here is, and what you see in all of these reports, is that they're talking about the difficult issues that are on the table. The fact that those are on the table now and are being wrestled with is usually a sign of the end game being afoot. On soybeans, it's not so much that they're debating how much China is going to buy. It's debating the real details of when China is going to buy and for how long and so on. Those are the details that you're going to be ironing out to the very end.
Sean, both sides are spinning, obviously. Are they spinning in the same direction? Because for a while there, it seemed like Beijing was spinning one direction, Washington was spinning the other.
Well, look, the spin we get from both sides is that both sides want to do a deal. I think we should keep in mind that this phase one deal is a narrow deal. This is not going to change fundamentally the economic relationship between the U.S. and China. In some ways, it's going to repair some of the damage, like the farm exports, the collapse of farm exports that we've seen over the last 2 years as a result of these trade wars. The real question is where these negotiations go to afterwards, and how they tackle bigger issues, bigger structural issues in the relationship, and whether they can. And on that front, the Trump administration is very positive about there being a phase 2, 3, possibly. And on the Chinese side, what we keep hearing over and over again is that quietly they're quite skeptical that they will have any success.
Yeah, and it all means we're going to be in 2020, which happens to be an election year, which may complicate it further. Thanks so much to Sean Donnan in Washington. Now let's go to Kevin Cirilli on Capitol Hill down in Washington. We have day 2 of those public impeachment hearings. What did we learn from Ambassador Yovanovitch today?
Former Ambassador Yovanovitch really outlining for the first time publicly her perception with regards to the State Department and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney, dispute with the State Department as they negotiated with Ukraine. In a series of testimonies, she laid out her case that she believes the State Department was dismantled, not funded, and key posts, vacancies left open all around the world. She said that her ousting last May had shaken morale within the agency, and President Trump responding in real time, pushing back against that characterization in a series of 2 tweets while the hearing was going on. He says that she was someone who was not taken seriously in any of her roles in her 33-year career at the State Department as a career diplomat. He also pushed back against the notion that posts weren't being filled, saying that he was saving taxpayers' money. Now, this is just day 2 of the public phase of the impeachment inquiry, and from here, lawmakers on the House Intelligence Committee will go behind closed doors later today to meet with David Holmes. He reportedly is the individual who overheard President Trump speaking to EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland about an update with regards to Ukraine President Zelensky's investigations into the Bidens. That is really what is at stake here. Now, I can also tell you that senior Republican aides in the Senate say that really this, so far, nothing has been testified that would change their calculus should President Trump ultimately be impeached and it go to the Senate for a trial. As of now, this still largely remains a partisan issue.
So that proceeding will continue for some time, it looks like. One proceeding came to an end today. In the meantime, Roger Stone, a supporter of President Trump, was convicted of lying, basically. Will that have any effect at all on the impeachment? Has President Trump insulated himself actually, from Mr. Stone?
Roger Stone was found guilty on 7 counts by a federal jury in Florida just within the last 15 minutes. He was convicted of lying to Congress, lying under oath to members of the House Intelligence Committee. He was also found guilty of witness tampering as it relates to his connection with being a conduit of sorts with WikiLeaks. Remember, in that 2-week trial over the past 2 weeks, there was testimony from Steve Bannon as well as Rick Gates, who is Paul Manafort's top deputy. The bottom line, his being found guilty is just a warning sign to all of the individuals at the State Department as well as others who have been called to testify before the House Intelligence Committee, both publicly and privately.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you so much. It's Kevin Cirilli reporting from Capitol Hill. Now we're going to turn to Damian Sassower. We're going to talk about Hong Kong a little bit. So, Damian, things are not looking good in Hong Kong, and specifically there are obviously a lot of public disturbances. It's affecting the economy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this last week of protest, I mean, the violence, what's gone on there, it's caused a complete dislocation in the front end of the interbank lending curve, otherwise known as the HIBOR curve. So what we've seen here is basically 3-month U.S. Hong Kong yield differentials rise to 64 basis points. That's the highest since 1999. This inversion has caused the 1-week rate to surge to 4%. That's a 300-bip move in just the last month alone. And look, you see that Hong Kong's lowered its full year 2019 GDP forecast to negative 1.3%, the first full year of contraction on record since the global financial crisis. And what is this doing for the economy? As you rightly mentioned, we've had massive cancellations. I mean, Cathay Pacific just canceled their big airline conference, PGA tours, the showing of Matilda, fireworks. Everything is getting canceled. That's bad for tourism revenue. And as we know, that's what Hong Kong relies on very heavily.
Exactly. They need the tourists, and right now is not a good time, particularly to go to Hong Kong for a visit. What is it? What effects does this have beyond Hong Kong? Where do we see it show up potentially? Is it in Beijing? Where is it?
Yeah, well, that's a great point on Beijing. I mean, what we're really watching, I mean, if you just look at Beijing, they've doubled their police force in Hong Kong in recent weeks, really, and they still have that huge, large garrison in Shenzhen of troops offshore, and we're monitoring those movements clearly because if Beijing were to intervene directly into Hong Kong, all bets are off. We know that U.S. Congress has passed that bill, and we know Trump is against that.
Okay, Damian Sassower, always great to have you with us, Damian. And now we want to get a check on the markets. For that, we turn, of course, to Abigail Doodle to find out how all this is affecting the markets. And as I'm looking at it right now, it's a happy Friday so far.
You're certainly right about that, David. We have record highs here right across the board for the major averages. In fact, the S&P 500 now up a 6-week in a row, the longest weekly winning streak since 2017. So the bulls are in charge. And in terms of all the conversation